much for all the participants, but also especially to our fellow speakers. We would like to welcome, we have today Ibu Anne from the UNHCR. Hi, good afternoon, Ibu Anne.
Selamat sore, everybody.
Selamat sore. We also have Pak Sukamta from the Commission 1 of the Indonesian House of Representatives. Pak Sukamta, good afternoon. And we also have Pak Dean Shefki, Deputy Chief of Mission of the International Organization for Migration based in Jakarta. Thank you, Pak Dean, for joining us today. This very special day.
Thank you for the invitation. Hello, everyone.
Yes, hello. Also, Mbak Rizka from Suaka. Hi, Mbak.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
And last but not least, of course, our fellow researcher who will be responding to questions and trying to value everything that will be discussed today, Mas Yudi from the Institute of International Studies, Universitas Gadjah Mada.
Hi, Dio. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, thank you all. Well, I'm not going to take so much time, just going to share some notes with regard to today's session. So first of all, we would like to inform everyone that this discussion is streamed online and recorded. So this will be available on Zoom for those joining and also on YouTube. And it will be stored on YouTube of LBH Jakarta. It will remain there. For the participants, for those who'd like to claim your certificate and already applied, please, to ensure that we understood that you're following the discussion, screen capture your questions and send to direct message to PolicyLab.id on Instagram so that we can share the link. Be sure to follow because it will be available on the Instagram stories and will be made available there so you can try it directly download. And please also respect others because this is not a Zoom webinar. This is a Zoom meeting. So please ensure that respect others too with the questions. And if we heard or we learned that any participants are not respecting to the speakers or to the others, then the moderator or the host will be discontinuing your participation or rejecting from the room. Well, that's all from the secretary, from the host. On behalf of the organizer, PolicyLab, Suaka, and Sandya, thank you so much. And I will now leave the discussion. Have a fruitful one, and we'll be giving the floor to Karina. Please, Karina.
Muted.
You are still muted, Karina.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute my microphone. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, teman-teman sekalian. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, dan salam kebajikan. My name is Karina Larasati. I am the Senior Fellow in Institute of Migration and Refugee at PolicyLab. I'm delighted to welcome you all today in today's event, which is part of the PolicyLab Teras Terbuka series. And this event is special edition 1 because it will be held to celebrate the World Refugee Day 2020. And this event was organized by PolicyLab in collaboration with SuakaID, Indonesian Civil Society Network for Refugee Right Protection, Sandya Institute, Center for Peace and Human Rights, and LBH Jakarta. In today's panel, we will address the how refugee rights are being protected and ensured during the time of pandemic. More specifically, we will be hearing from our panelists, 5 of them, within this new normal scenario that has been recently being launched by the government, whether the refugee and asylum seeker are the entities that will also becoming the focus of several regulation from the government in response to COVID-19 and the scenario of new normal. Because as we know together, COVID-19 has caused a drastic change in the socioeconomic structure of almost all countries in the world. And for Indonesia itself and the service provider within the country, there is an increasingly urgent need for measures to protect people and get the crack in our whole social protection and migration system. It is true that this virus does not discriminate. It has affected all levels of our society equally. However, we cannot deny there's a fact that there are groups within our society that are very vulnerable and in fact has disproportionately affected by this crisis, including migrant and refugee. And if we take a look at the data, according to UNHCR in 2019, Indonesia is home to about 30,000 refugee and asylum seekers from Afghanistan, Myanmar, Somalia, Sri Lanka, Iran, Palestine, Pakistan, and Iraq. And for Indonesia, being the non-state party to the Refugee Convention, the refugee right remain unfulfilled, and neither has it ever become the priority agenda in Indonesian domestic affairs. However, through the Presidential Regulation Number 125 of 2016 that has been enacted in 2017, the Indonesian government has a commitment to contribute in protecting the life of refugees within the country. However, in the unexpected crisis like what happened now, it is very interesting to see how Indonesian refugee decree has functioning and serve as a legal umbrella for the protection of refugee rights in the country. While at the same time, we are seeing so many government right now has used this crisis as an opportunity to close their border for refugee and asylum seeker. If you see some news or information from media, social media, you've been seeing some government use this crisis as justification to stop the incoming of refugee and asylum seeker. So today, we'll be having a very rich and multi-perspective discussion about how the role of government so far, how is the advocacy effort has been underway, what challenges are there, and more specifically, we are going to talk about how Indonesian refugee decree has been equipped with the capacity to adjust to this crisis and the life after pandemic, or what we know as the new normal. We are joined by 5 experts. Previously has greeted all the participants and the audience, and I've seen some of the participants just enter the room, so maybe I will just inform one more time about the 5 experts and representative of key stakeholders in this issue that are becoming the panelists today. We have Bapak Sukamta from the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee of Indonesia's representative. We also have Ms. Anne Maiman from UNHCR. We also have Bapak Dejan Micavki, the Deputy Chief of IOM Indonesia, followed by Mbak Rizka Agadianta, the Chairperson of Suaka, and last but not least, we also have present with us today Yunizara Diputra, researcher of Institute of International Studies, UGM. And the discussion today will take interactive form. Each speaker will have about 50 minutes to share their thought and opinion for a moderated question. After that, we'll have a follow-up interaction for about 30 minutes, followed by a special discussion session for 30 minutes also to answer some of the selected questions from the audience. So I'd like to remind you guys once again, if you want to pose a question for our panelists, please send your question to Zoom's chat box privately or in public, and we'll try our best to reach your question when the second session has ended. So okay, I think without further ado, I will welcome our first speaker, Bapak Sukamta from Indonesian House of Representatives. Halo Bapak Sukamta.
Halo, Mbak Garina.
Hai Bapak, apa kabar? Sehat?
Baik, how are you doing? You all right?
Okay, thank you very much Bapak for joining us today. We'll be very keen to hear your opinion, your thought about the recent phenomenon, the protection of refugee and asylum seeker during the time of crisis. So, as we know that Indonesia saat ini mempunyai refugee decree, Bapak, di mana terdapat komitmen pemerintah di dalamnya untuk melindungi hak-hak para pengungsi. Presidential decree ini dibuat sekitar 4 tahun yang lalu di masa normal. Dan sekarang kita sedang ada di masa krisis nih Pak. Apa sejauh ini yang telah menjadi kontribusi pemerintah Indonesia untuk menjamin keselamatan dan pemenuhan hak-hak para refugee yang berada di Indonesia? Apakah kemudian dalam regulasi yang dikeluarkan oleh pemerintah untuk menghadapi masa krisis ini dan kemudian sedang memasuki new normal, apakah pengungsi dan juga asylum seeker menjadi fokus perhatian dalam kebijakan yang dikeluarkan ini, Bapak? Silahkan.
Iya, terima kasih Mbak Darina. Thank you everyone for your participation today. Because I just knew that the discussion would be held in English just before the discussion started. So I prepare my presentation in Indonesia. So I think I would like to talk in Indonesian, and I believe that most of the participants, or maybe all of the participants, understand Indonesian. Kalau bisa minta tolong presentasi saya ditampilkan ya. Ini ya, judulnya peran strategis Indonesia di dalam masalah pengungsi dunia. Berikutnya saya ingin masuk ke inti pertanyaan yang disampaikan tadi saja, bahwa sampai hari ini Indonesia ini masih memiliki pengungsi yang sampai saya kira yang tercatat mungkin sekitar 20.000, tetapi pada faktanya mungkin sampai 30.000 ya para pengungsi yang tersebar di seluruh Indonesia dengan berbagai macam background, mulai dari Myanmar, Afghanistan, dari negara-negara Afrika, Timur Tengah, dan seterusnya. Terus berikutnya. Next, please. Saya kira ini kita lihat sekilas saja. Indonesia ini memang sampai hari ini belum meratifikasi Konvensi 51 yang berkaitan dengan Konvensi dan protokol PBB mengenai pengungsi, refugees. Kita terus mendorong, tetapi memang pemerintah juga punya alasan tersendiri bahwa konsekuensi dari meratifikasi ini memang tidak mudah bagi negara-negara yang sedang membangun seperti Indonesia, berbeda dengan negara-negara yang sudah sangat maju seperti di Eropa dan Amerika. Ya, mereka beban ekonominya mungkin jauh lebih kecil dibandingkan negara kita, sehingga mereka dengan sangat sangat mudah melakukan ratifikasi. Nah, sementara Indonesia masih agak berat ya, kita dorong terus tapi agak berat. Terus berikutnya, next please. Nah, ini kita punya sebaran pengungsi mulai dari Aceh, Medan, Tanjung Pinang, Pontianak, Jabodetabek, Surabaya, Kupang, Makassar, dan Yogyakarta juga ada di tempat dapil saya itu cukup banyak. Terus berikutnya, next please. Nah, masalah pengungsi di Indonesia ini cukup banyak, cukup kompleks, mulai dari bermacam background, kemudian tidak jelas masa tunggu, dan berapa lama akan di Indonesia untuk ditempatkan di negara tujuan. Tempat penampungan pengungsi ini sampai hari ini masih dicampur dengan berbagai macam urusan keimigrasian, mulai dari tahanan, penampungan sementara ya. Kemudian sarana prasarana yang belum sesuai dengan standar perlindungan internasional. Sementara kemudian ketika pengungsi ini diberikan ruang kebebasan untuk keluar dari penampungan, ini terjadi gesekan dan konflik sosial dengan masyarakat di sekitar karena perbedaan bermacam background tadi. Kemudian juga masuknya pengungsi ke wilayah Asia Tenggara termasuk Indonesia ini dimanfaatkan juga oleh sindikat penyelundupan manusia. Kita tidak menolak itu. Kemudian pemerintah Indonesia tidak memiliki kewajiban untuk menerima permohonan suaka para pengungsi, apalagi menjadikan sebagai WNI. karena memang kita belum meratifikasi tadi. Kemudian pemerintah Indonesia ini menyerahkan urusan pengungsi di Indonesia kepada perwakilan UNHCR di Indonesia. Namun kita juga tahu UNHCR memiliki keterbatasan dalam hal dana dan kira-kira kalau kesanggupan yang disampaikan itu hanya sampai 300 atau 400 pengungsi. Nah, tentu nanti dari UNHCR bisa memberikan konfirmasinya. Terus berikutnya, next please. Nah, secara legal kita memang belum punya landasan hukum bisa sebelumnya, tapi kita sejak tahun 2015 saya termasuk yang mendorong cukup kuat munculnya PP Nomor 125 tahun 2016 ini. Jadi waktu 2015 kita punya beban pengungsi yang cukup besar yang masuk ke Indonesia waktu itu, khususnya dari Afghanistan, Irak, dan Myanmar. Dan ada persoalan-persoalan pengungsi yang serius waktu itu, dan kita belum punya payung hukum. Nah, saya mendorong munculnya PP 125 ini, yang kemudian oleh Kemenlu ditanggapi dan didorong ke pemerintah muncul tahun 2016. Namun demikian, kita tahu bahwa PP ini masih punya kekurangan ya. PP ini tidak memadai untuk hal yang terkait dengan hak-hak pengungsi dan pencari suaka. Dan tidak satupun dari hak-hak yang diakui secara internasional yang melekat pada pengungsi yang di dalam konvensi PBB itu diatur dalam PP tersebut. Jadi PP ini hanya difokuskan terutama pada pedoman teknis untuk lembaga pemerintah. Jadi mengatur intern pemerintah Indonesia ketika terjadi situasi di mana pengungsi datang ke wilayah Indonesia. Jadi saya kira ini persoalan yang mendasar dan cukup serius yang terkait dengan pengungsi. The next please. Berikutnya.
Pak, sebentar lagi loading.
Oh, okay. Lanjut aja. Lanjut. Karena waktunya cuma 15 menit ya. Terus, nah saya langsung aja kepada rekomendasi ini. Jadi kita di dalam situasi pandemi, di dalam situasi normal saja kita masih punya beban yang sangat serius. Jadi pemerintah kita menempatkan pengungsi ini di bawah urusan keimigrasian dan di bawah Kemlu. Nah, imigrasi tidak punya anggaran khusus yang cukup untuk menangani pengungsi ini. Nah, di dalam undang-undang kita, urusan pengungsi ini masih dijadikan satu dengan urusan pencari suaka, urusan imigran gelap, urusan segala macam, pokoknya yang dari warga negara asing yang masuk ke Indonesia itu dicampur adukkan menjadi satu. Nah, saya kira ini satu persoalan yang cukup serius dan kita mendorong kepada pemerintah, walaupun pemerintah itu tidak mau atau belum mau meratifikasi konvensi tahun 51 tentang Refugees ini, kita berharap pemerintah bisa membuat undang-undang khusus yang selama ini masih dimasukkan dalam undang-undang keimigrasian ya. Pemerintah bisa membuat undang-undang khusus soal penanganan pengungsi ini, sehingga kita mungkin harus kompromi, tidak menyediakan fasilitasi seperti yang dituntut di dalam konvensi tahun 51, tapi kita juga memberikan bantuan yang cukup manusiawi kepada para pengungsi. Bagaimanapun juga pengungsi ini adalah tamu bagi negara kita yang harus kita hormati, dan secara kemanusiaan mereka ini memerlukan bantuan kita. Ya. Nah, saya kira ini hal yang serius yang kami terus berusaha mendorong melalui Komisi 1 DPR RI kepada pemerintah, ya lahirnya undang-undang tentang penanganan pengungsi ini. Nah, sisi yang lain tentu kita ingin negara kita terus mengkampanyekan kehidupan yang damai, ya supaya tidak ada konflik, sehingga tidak perlu ada pengungsi. Nah, tentu yang berikutnya yang kita perlu garis bawahi adalah kita ingin agar status pengungsi ini diberikan batasan waktu, ya, sampai berapa lama, karena rata-rata di Indonesia ini bukan menjadi tujuan akhir pengungsi, tetapi Indonesia ini hanya menjadi tempat transit karena lokasi tujuan yang cukup jauh, rata-rata ke Australia atau ke New Zealand, ya. Nah, Indonesia menjadi tempat transit. Nah, kita berharap Indonesia bekerja sama dengan PBB, HCR, dan negara-negara tempat tujuan pengungsian itu, supaya ada batasan waktu, ya, kepada berapa lama para pengungsi ini akan berada di Indonesia dan akan diterima oleh negara tujuan, atau kita berharap juga kalau konflik di negaranya ini sudah selesai, para pengungsi ini bisa kembali ke negaranya. Nah, kita juga berharap mungkin somehow pemerintah ini membuat aturan, misalnya para pengungsi kita ini diberikan ruang untuk bisa bekerja secara part-time atau full-time, dan mungkin somehow bisa menjadi warga negara Indonesia di belakang hari, ya. Nah, tentu ini butuh dasar hukum yang serius. Nah, dengan begitu nanti di masa pandemi, di masa COVID, itu pemerintah juga punya legitimasi yang cukup atau bahkan kewajiban, ya, agar mereka juga diberikan alokasi anggaran APBN yang cukup, karena selama ini mungkin pemerintah belum punya dasar hukum yang memadai sehingga merasa belum berkewajiban, nah, sehingga alokasi dana APBN itu masih sangat kecil. Saya lihat pemerintah lebih melihat kerjasama dengan lembaga-lembaga lain seperti UNHCR dan IAM itu lebih menjadi prioritas daripada mengalokasi dana sendiri untuk para pengungsi ini. The next, please. Nah, ini yang kita inginkan, ya, dari sisi dari beberapa kebijakan dan aturan. Nah, sisi yang lain secara teknis kita ingin agar pemerintah ini bisa memperbaiki atau menyediakan, ya, sarana prasarana khusus yang untuk para pengungsi ini sesuai dengan standar lindungan internasional, atau menempatkan pengungsi mungkin di satu tempat di pulau khusus atau bagaimana. Sebab dalam kasus di daerah istimewa Yogyakarta, ya, di dapil saya, karena Jogja ini punya pelabuhan khusus yang ada di bagian selatan ke Samudra Indonesia, cukup dekat kalau mau ke Australia, itu secara diam-diam juga dipakai oleh para pengungsi, ya, untuk menjadi tempat berlayar menuju ke Australia. Nah, DIY ini juga menjadi salah satu tujuan transit pengungsi yang cukup banyak. Nah, sementara imigrasi di DIY ini tidak punya tempat untuk menampung para pengungsi itu. Nah, sehingga imigrasi ini bekerja sama dengan IOM dan UNHCR. Kemarin dulu, ya, itu menampung para pengungsi ini di tempat-tempat penampungan seadanya. Kemarin sempat ditampung di Wisma Haji, namun kemudian di Wisma Haji ini karena pandemi dipakai untuk menjadi semacam rumah sakit darurat, ya, supaya karena ruang-ruang rumah sakit darurat di DIY ini agak kurang, ya. Nah, sehingga rumah sakit haji menjadi tidak available bagi para pengungsi ini. Nah, tentu ke depan kita berharap di DIY, di Ujung Pandang, di Medan, di Aceh, ya ada tempat-tempat khusus yang bisa menampung mereka dan layak untuk hidup ya, karena mereka tidak punya hak untuk bekerja, tidak punya hak untuk menjadi hidup sebagaimana warga negara Indonesia di sini. Saya kira ini harus mendapat perhatian yang sangat serius. Nah, kemudian sisi yang lain, kita juga mendorong supaya pemerintah kita ini memperketat dan mengawasi aktivitas penyelundupan manusia, yang ini mau tidak mau ini harus diakui bahwa itu ada dan menjadi aktor di balik masuknya pengungsi-pengungsi ke Indonesia. Saya sempat berinteraksi dengan para pengungsi dari Afghanistan, dari Asia Tengah, dari Afrika ya. Mereka ini rata-rata sebetulnya bukan orang yang miskin di negaranya. Jadi mereka bisa datang melakukan perjalanan sampai Indonesia dan mereka akan menuju ke tempat negara lain. Sebagian dari mereka tidak mau lagi pergi ke tempat lain, mereka sudah settle di Jakarta. Nah, mereka ini rata-rata punya keluarga yang cukup cukup kaya di negaranya, yang bisa membelikan tiket, memberikan perjalanan dan masih kontak dengan mereka. Dan akhirnya ini akan menjadi presiden tersendiri dan di Jakarta kadang-kadang para pengungsi ini karena mungkin mereka dari Afrika, dari Asia Tengah, mereka good looking ya, mereka akhirnya tidak bisa bekerja formal, mereka mencari penghasilan dengan cara-cara yang ilegal yang sebetulnya juga agak immoral gitu ya. Saya agak terganggu dengan itu, tapi ya inilah persoalan yang kita hadapi. Jadi pengungsi ini juga ada unsur-unsur kriminal di dalamnya yang harus kita selesaikan ya. Nah, yang berikutnya saya kira yang terakhir, bagaimana kita semua melibatkan masyarakat dan NGO bersama-sama untuk menjadi bagian agar bisa membantu paling tidak menyelesaikan sementara persoalan pengungsi ini. Nah, jadi kalau kita berada sepenuhnya pada APBN, saya kira it is not the best time, tapi we can do supaya bisa meringankan beban mereka. Nah, saya kira demikian presentasi kami. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Sukamta atas penjelasannya yang sangat menerangkan ya mengenai keadaan refugee yang ada di Indonesia saat ini dan juga bagaimana kontribusi pemerintah dalam menangani isu refugee selama pandemi. Mungkin sedikit saya akan menjelaskan kembali beberapa poin dari penjelasan Pak Sukamta kepada teman-teman dan mungkin audiens dan juga speaker yang membutuhkan penjelasan dalam translasi dalam bahasa Inggris. Oke, ada beberapa poin yang saya tangkap tadi dari presentasi Bapak Sukamta, bahwa the issue of refugee in Indonesia is indeed not very popular and also very dilematic, because Indonesia is not a member of Refugee Convention first, and the practice in society is often colliding with some of the social problem. Indonesia already has a legal basis as stipulated in presidential decree. However, in practice, it is not very strong enough to ensure the fulfillment of refugee right, the protection of refugee and asylum seeker right in Indonesia. None of the refugee rights that are recognized internationally are regulated in the decree. And so far, the decree has only been a platform for the government agency to coordinate and work in dealing with the refugee. But none of the point at the decree are really reflecting the international standard regarding the protection of human refugee rights. And also in reality, in normal situation, this decree actually does not function optimally in accommodating the needs and fulfillment of refugee rights. And now in time of crisis, we don't see much of changes and improvement in regard to the function of the decree, where the situation right now even more problematic and dilematic. So as mentioned by Bapak Sukamta, it is the time for Indonesia to start thinking of having a more stronger legal basis for dealing with refugee and asylum seeker, including have a clear mechanism to regulate their residency and the time duration of this refugee and asylum seeker while in Indonesia. And Indonesia also need to have a clear legal basis with provision that could really regulate a more suitable shelter and accommodation for refugee and asylum seeker while they are waiting for their time in Indonesia. And also the government need to deal with the root of problem in this whole refugee phenomenon, including providing a more serious effort to combat people smuggling and human trafficking. Okay, and also a multi-stakeholder initiative is really important to having a more optimal and strategic measure to deal with the refugee phenomenon. Okay, thank you very much, Bapak Sukamta, for a very insightful explanation.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now we'll be moving on to have our next speaker, Miss N. Mayman. Hello.
Hello. Yes. Selamat sore.
Okay.
Selamat sore. Thank you very
Selamat
much.
sore Ibu, apa kabar?
Oke, apa kabar? Baik, baik.
Baik, alhamdulillah. Okay, so now without further ado, I will be having some questions to address. So maybe you can share a little bit your opinion from the perspective of UNHCR regarding the whole phenomenon of refugee in this time of crisis. Can you share with us? We've been very curious. I've been very curious about the experiences of UNHCR. How is the handling of refugee in the time of crisis? What happened in the field? Is everything going as usual, or are there any challenges encountered by UNHCR? And also, we are curious to hear your opinion. Is there any kind of support or contribution from the government or maybe other relevant party in assisting the work of UNHCR in dealing with the refugee throughout the process? So please, Ms. Anne, the floor is yours.
Okay, terima kasih, and thank you very much for organizing this very important event as we are celebrating the World Refugee Day in 2020. And thank you for the question. I think, first of all, it's important to point out that while the world has gone through and is going through a completely new situation with the pandemic, there are activities that unfortunately have not stopped. So we have continued to see conflicts, armed conflicts are continuing and have continued throughout the pandemic. The displacement are continuing to happen. So we have a situation where a large part of the world somehow feel that everything has been changed, but there are unfortunately these very war-related issues that continue to be causes for flight. So refugees have continued to flee during the pandemic, but however, states have imposed travel restrictions for the sake of protecting public health concerns. So I will remain a little bit at the global level because I think it's also important for all of us to understand the global situation with regard to displacement before we go into the more details on in Indonesia. So globally here, as we celebrate World Refugee Day, we have 80 million displaced. Out of 100 people on the planet, 1 is displaced. So you can see that is it's the biggest number we have ever had. The biggest situations that we have that are generating refugees are Syria. We have 5.6 million Syrian refugees. We have from Afghanistan 2.5 million refugees. from Myanmar, which is closer to Indonesia. We have 1.1 million. But the interesting thing about the refugees is that they are mostly going to their neighboring countries to seek protection. So, for example, with Myanmar, most of the refugees from Myanmar, they have fled to Bangladesh. But also, just to continue with the activities and with the dramas that are continuing while we are facing this pandemic, we have currently a crisis with boats, Rohingya refugees that are stuck on boats in the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea. They have not been able to find a safe port to disembark. There are some that have been able to disembark in Malaysia and some in Bangladesh. But this is very critical that states, they unite around the table to discuss the solutions on what to do with the boats that are currently stuck at sea. And we have seen that because of the pandemic, there is less interest. States are looking away. So we have a very unfortunate situation with displacement and states not stepping up to their responsibility. So in Indonesia, I think most of you know that we have a small refugee population. We have 13,534 refugees, to be precise, a little bit less than 14,000. And the situation in Indonesia is, as the previous speaker from Commission 1 very rightly said, we have a presidential regulation that was adopted in 2016, but Indonesia is not yet a signature to the 1951 convention. But I do think that the presidential regulation, although that it's not implemented fully, it's not implemented with all its provision. I think, and if you look at in the region, it is actually a quite, if it was implemented fully, it is actually a quite strong presidential regulation and a strong legal framework for refugee protection. But of course, it needs to be implemented fully. Now, what Indonesia, as many other countries have done, is that they have imposed travel restrictions for foreigners that are coming to their country. So also Indonesia, they implemented a regulation number 11 in 2020 from the Ministry of Law and Human Rights, where there was temporary restriction on foreigners that was imposed to enter the Indonesian territory. Now, the problem with, in general, the public health concern that are obvious and fully legitimate for states to implement is that there is no contradiction to taking care of the public health concern and ensuring that asylum seekers has access to protection, to asylum procedures. So what we did in UNHCR when this legislation came out that was restricting access for foreigners to enter Indonesia is that we sent a letter to the ministry where we highlighted the importance for the Indonesian state not to neglect the respect of the principle of non-refoulement, and that the public health concerns could be fully respected while access to asylum and the principle of non-refoulement would also be respected. For example, by ensuring quarantine, checking that the asylum seekers who would arrive would have any symptoms. So all these measures that countries are putting in place for their citizens could also, in an inclusive manner, be applied for asylum seekers. Now, in reality, our last asylum seeker that arrived to Indonesia by air is on the 5th of March. So that was just before this new legislative act was implemented. So we have seen that Indonesia, of course, has had to issue a new legislation. Now the thing is that this regulation does not specify how long the temporary ban on access for foreigners to enter Indonesia, how long it will last. So we are looking to that answer. There is an Article 7 in that regulation that states that state permit extension application will resume after the COVID-19 pandemic is declared over by the relevant authorities. So we assume that the temporary ban will be lifted once the COVID-19 pandemic is declared over. However, the big question is, of course, when will that happen? And as we look at it now, and with all the experts coming with their opinion from the Ministry of Health and WHO, we all know that we have to live with COVID-19 for a long time. You know, people are talking about one year, 2 years. So it's important that we try and look at how can we make sure that asylum seekers still have access to Indonesia. Because the thing is also, if you just go back to the presidential regulation, and as we were saying, it is not fully implemented. And also, for example, on the issue of healthcare, access to healthcare, there is some provisions in the regulation, in the presidential regulation, but it's not very strong, and it will not cover the full spectrum of rights to healthcare. However, on the issue of access to asylum, on the issue of search and rescue of refugees that would be at distress in sea, you know, there the presidential regulation is actually quite clear. So I also think that if the Indonesian state would use their this presidential regulation also in the time of this pandemic, there will actually be, it will be possible to ensure that access to asylum and the principle of non-refoulement would be respected. Let me just say, just on the principle of non-refoulement, in case our participants that are listening do not know what it means. It means that a state does not have the right to turn back a person who would be at risk, whose life would be at risk. So that is a principle that is known as a principle in customary law. So it actually means that even non-signatory states that have not signed the 1951 convention, as for example Indonesia, they cannot disregard this principle. And I also just wanted to say, when we talk about the 1951 convention, and I do hope that Indonesia, they will one day will sign it, because I think that it would facilitate really the management of refugees to a really, really big extent. So I hope that Indonesia one day will sign the 1951 convention. But I would like to say that if we look at the big refugee hosting countries in the region, like for example, Pakistan and Bangladesh, they are hosting thousands of refugees. They're not signature to the convention. So it doesn't mean that you should not take care of refugees if you have not signed the 1951 convention. So what I think is important is, of course, to acknowledge that refugees, like many Indonesians also, have lost their means to cover their basic needs. The loss of livelihood, of course, has been immense, and refugees, because there's no right to livelihood opportunities for refugees do not have the right to work in Indonesia. So that means that refugees, they are forced to try and get by on the informal market. But the opportunities on the informal market have, of course, decreased tremendously during this pandemic. So I think that in general, what we need to think is that, and what I would like to point out is that if we look at how the situation was before the pandemic and how it is now, and whether we would think that the situation has gone worse because of the pandemic, I would say that the problems and the challenges that we had before the pandemic have only got worse. So before the pandemic, refugees didn't have access to livelihood opportunities, but maybe some of them, they could get by because there would be some opportunities on the informal market. And UNHCR, we had a cash program like IOM, but that gap, the fact that refugees cannot take care of themselves, are not allowed to take care of themselves and cover their basic needs, have only grown deeper and more difficult, and have only deteriorated their situation. So I think that is important, that we look at the gaps that we are facing. And I think on the livelihood issue, what we already were doing before the pandemic kicked in was to work on a livelihood program together with, among others, ILO. We have a program that's called Ready for Business, where we pair up a refugee together with an Indonesian, so it also benefits Indonesians around the business idea. And that is a program that we are continuing. But I think I would like to quote here the Indonesian President Joko Widodo, who is saying that we must coexist with COVID-19. Most importantly, people must stay productive and be safe from the virus. So I think we have here, from the president himself, an understanding that it is important with productivity for everybody. And I would really stress that that is also important for refugees. And there have also been other statements made by the president's staff in some of the protection cluster meetings that UNHCR are participating in. And here there was a statement that that here in the new normal, Indonesia will focus on to become less dependent on imports. So that would mean there will be more focus on local products and produce. So here we would really see that there is an opportunity here for increasing the access and allowing refugees to access livelihood opportunities, because they could actually help with contributing to this plan. Refugees are agents of economic activity. They can help to contribute to the economic development and to support Indonesia to become less dependent on import. So I think I would say here, as maybe a concluding remarks on this question, that the presidential regulation, it's a progressive model, but of course there are obvious gaps, and we need to make it stronger. And one way to make it stronger, it is to have some specific directives being issued by the line ministries. So for example, as we had in 2019, a decree from the Ministry of Education to ensure refugee children's access to education. We are looking to the Ministry of Manpower to issuing a similar decree on refugees' access to livelihood. So I think I'll stop here. I don't know if, I mean, there are many aspects of your questions, but if there is anything you would like me to target more specifically, please.
Okay, Ms. Anne, thank you very much. That's very insightful from the experiences and perspective of UNHCR regarding the handling of refugee in time of crisis. Yes, we will be following up several questions to your explanation later in the second section. We will have a follow-up interaction together with our respondent, Yunizar Adiputra. But maybe before we are moving to the next speaker, I will be giving up some of the important points from Ms. Ann's explanation from the perspective of UNHCR, that as the crisis hit the country, there is an unfortunate situation where many governments has taken measures that limit the movement of refugee and asylum seekers, one of which is the travel restriction. It is legitimate to state to implement this measure with health concern and the measure to halt an even wider transmission of COVID-19 only if in the process the access to health service for refugee is quarantined and still respecting the very principle of non-refoulement. So far, there is no clarity about government response in this regard. Travel restrictions still greatly affect the fulfillment of basic rights of refugee and asylum seekers, especially regarding the access to health services. Indonesia is not party of Refugee Convention, but it cannot be a justification for not respecting the principle of non-refoulement and also neglecting the urgency in the survival of refugee and asylum seekers that are coming to the country. The decree itself is a progressive model, but we need some sort of stronger legal product that will ensure the protection of refugee and asylum seeker rights in the future, most importantly in the time of new normal. So thank you very much, Ms. Ann. We will be following up several questions later in the second session. Thank you. So, okay, now I'll welcoming our third speaker, Pak Dean Misafki. Hi, Bapak.
Hello, hello.
Hi, hello. How are you?
Thank you. Good. Bye.
It's very nice to finally meet you.
Same. Likewise.
Yeah, if you recall, we've been exchanging some email before in
We
my
did.
previous research about refugee as well.
Hope it helped.
Yeah, well, we'll be very interested to talk more about that after this. But now I have several questions to address to you regarding the refugee phenomenon in time of crisis and new normal. We are delighted to hear your opinion, your experiences in dealing with this. Similarly, with the question that have been addressed to Ms. Ann, what do you think about the whole phenomenon of refugee in time of crisis? What happened in the field from your observation, and is everything has going as usual? Are there challenges facing IOM in dealing with refugee in time of crisis? And what do you think will be the projection of challenges in welcoming the new normal scenario? Thank you. Pak Dean, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Is it Salma siang or sore now? How should I greet? Siang or sore?
Sore, sudah memasuki sore.
Selamat sore now then. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to PolicyLab and to Sukanta, to all the guests, Ms. Ann from UNHCR, and all the people that are with us at this moment, who are showing interest in this matter. I mean, it's a wide question. As you said, it's a new normal, and let's be honest, no one knows how the new normal will look like. We are still trying to figure out, we are getting different information from different sources. We are following what is WHO as a most relevant source for this kind of information, but we are still trying to figure out how the new normal will look like in the days and the months to come. This is first time that the world is facing this kind of situation where we have such crisis on a global level. It's not only a pocket of a world or a certain part of the world, but basically the entire world, the entire globe is facing the same enemy, if I can say. And we have crisis all over the globe. Everyone and everywhere is affected. And you know, this virus is not recognizing color, religion, economic background, nationality. We are all affected, and we should be all careful and working together to fight this virus. all challenges also bring opportunities, and I believe this will bring us together, closer together, to make better things in future, to have better understanding among us, and as I said, to fight this virus together. When it comes to Indonesia, the refugees, asylum seekers, presidential decree, I cannot talk about today without going back a bit in the past. I'm lucky enough to be here long to see the changes that happen in Indonesia. When I came, I know that there were a lot of interceptions, that you maybe remember most of the asylum seekers and refugees were in detention centers. This is where I decided to go in the detention centers, improve the situation, and advocate for alternative to detentions. We started with the vulnerable population in the detention centers, addressing those issues. You know that's how the temporary accommodation was introduced. Later on, as the refugee status determination was progressing, as the number of refugees was increasing, IOM, UNHCR, and the other partners, in support with the government, with PolicyLab and the Refugee Task Force, we advocated for community accommodations. Today, I can proudly say that there are no refugees and asylum seekers in the detention centers. 100% of the population under IOM care is in a community accommodation in 10 locations around Indonesia, in 10 cities. We have offices, you know, from Jakarta, Tangerang, Makassar, Medan, Pekanbaru, Tanjung Pinang, Batam, Kupang, Surabaya, Semarang, Batam. And today, I would say that the understanding and the acceptance of the refugees and the asylum seekers is so normal. It's nothing new to Indonesia anymore. People are welcoming, people are supportive. Of course, when we go to the legal aspect, the frameworks, things can get better, but I can see progress from a couple of years ago and today. So we have the presidential decree, which is a great start. It's not the final product, I would say. It's not solving all the issues that we have at the moment, but it's a great document as a start. At least there is a skeleton, as Anne mentioned, what will happen if there is interception, if there is a search and rescue. So each and every institution within the local government and central government knows its role at the moment. Well, that was not the case a couple of years ago. Of course, maybe there is a need for another framework or legal document, and I can see that the parliamentarians and the ministries are interested in developing that into the new stage. We have a letter from the Ministry of Education that it's allowing to the refugee and asylum seekers kids to attend public schools, and I'm proud to say that we have around 620 children attending public schools. This is not 100% of the needs that we have at the moment, but it's still a good beginning. We are hoping that in the next year or two, we will have 100% of the children admitted in public schools. I am in parallel is providing informal education for the children and the adults. There is interest also from the population to attend high schools and universities. There is modest discussion with the Ministry of Education and the institutions which are showing interest in to accept the refugees and asylum seekers into the higher education. And we hope to see the results very soon. IM is also investing a lot in the minors, in the preparation for the preschool education, because it's essential for the refugee children to speak Bahasa in order to be admitted into the school. That's a must. And yes?
Sorry to interrupt you. You talk a lot about education. Now it comes to my mind to recall back our research previously. We know that IOM has been very active in advocating the access to education for refugee children. I am curious, how is the progress so far? Maybe you can follow up, like, can you share a little bit from the IOM experiences in assisting refugee during the learning process in time of crisis? I think like everybody wants to know that what happened to the child refugee who has going through education in Indonesia. They've been granting access to formal education, but what happened today now? Maybe you can share a little bit your opinion about that.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the question. Education, for me, it's a must. For us, for all of us, it's a must. Otherwise, we have, I call them lost generation. Let's say we had previously, years ago, 6-7 years ago, the refugees were here staying for 1 or 2 years. It was somehow manageable situation for the population to attend the informal education. And then they leave, off they go, whether it's resettlement or AVR. But now we have a population that actually almost 60% of the population under IOM care has been here more than 5 years. So you have children that came as 3 years or 5 years, now they're 10 years. And without opening the doors for public education, it's difficult to take them back into education, wherever the durable solutions take them, whether it's going to be inclusion here, whether it's going to be resettlement, whether it's going to be ABRR. If someone misses 5, 6, or 7 years of its education, we are creating a lost generation. That's why we invested a lot in the education. That was primary objective for us, even in the informal education that we had in our community learning centers that we have around the country. Each and every city has a community learning center. But also in parallel, we really worked on central level and particularly on a local level with the schools directly, advocating for the children to be admitted into the public schools. Luckily, there was understanding from the local communities, from the local authorities, from the local government, and of course, later on from the Ministry of Education and Child Protection. So we are really grateful for that. As I said, there is always space for improvement, but I think we're on a right track. And with the better advocacy from UNHCR, from the NGOs, from the academia, I think we will succeed very soon. When it comes on the second part of your question, what do we do at the moment? Of course, I was really fast in adjusting to the new normal. And at the moment, we are using different online platforms in order to continue with the education. So basically, the education continued with online classes to support, because we know, the limited resources that the refugee population has. So IAM is supporting the refugee children and the adults who are attending online classes with 100,000 rupiah for internet quota. So basically, each child or adult who is attending online classes, he is admitted on some kind of courses or continuing with its education. IAM is supporting with 100,000 rupiah per month for internet. So that's helping. The interest is high, and I'm proud to say that we don't have drop kids from the education at the moment. So everybody who was following the public education in the normal days into the school is still continuing with the education. If that's answering the question. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Mbak Karina, I think you're muted.
Yeah. Yeah, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. I have a hard time to unmute myself, sorry. Okay, thank you very much, Pak Dean, for your explanation from the perspective of IOM and the experiences that has been followed by IOM in this time of crisis, particularly in regard to education. So if you don't mind, I want to follow up a little bit about the challenges that are facing IOM in regard with providing access to education. As you mentioned, there has been an online class. IOM has tried their best to still giving access to education to refugee, but there are some sort of limitation, lack of resources to access online classes. Is there any kind of contribution from Indonesian government in regard to that, to support the work for IOM in ensuring the granting of access to education to refugee and asylum seeker? And is there any kind of support or contribution for other relevant parties in the process, Pak Dean?
If we go in the support, I mean, we have two different types of support. Whether it's support permitting the refugees and asylum seeker children to attend the schools and the public schools, or financial. Financial we don't get at the moment, and but anyway, we are happy with the government opening the doors for public education for the children. This is the biggest plus that we have at the moment, and I'm not sure whether the government is also supporting the local population with some kind of financial support when it comes to the education. So it won't be fair from my side to make that kind of a parallel, because I also understand that the government has its own priorities as well. But anyway, whatever has been decided for the local population, I believe the refugees and the asylum seekers should be taken in consideration as well. But going back again, we are grateful that the doors are finally open, and we hope that in future the numbers will increase. We will be here to support as much as we can. We will be working closely with the local government, with the local education departments, schools, the local communities. And as I said, it's a great beginning. We are progressing year by year. We also, as I mentioned, investing a lot in the preschool education, preparing this population for public education, because it makes really big difference. We were providing informal education for years, but it's not same, because you have the children which are 24/7 with the mother and father, with the neighbors, same faces all over and all over again. It was really a game changer when we opened the door for public education. You should see the happy faces when the kids put the uniform, the school bags on their back, when they are ready to go to school. When they enjoy the classes, when they go in the schoolyard, meeting new friends. I mean, before that we had, they were living one by one. Now they live together with the local population. Now they understand each other. Now there is a communication. They are meeting each other. So it really helped. It was a game changer. And I hope it will continue like that. You know that IOM is also investing a lot in the social cohesion, looking for opportunities for the adults to volunteer. We have a lot of refugees and asylum seekers who are contributing as Arabic classes teachers in the local schools, as trainers in the sports centers, as interpreters in the hospitals. So we are looking for this kind of opportunities, even for the adults, to make contribution to the local population.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Dean.
Welcome.
Yeah, we are looking forward to see a more another kind of a breakthrough from Indonesian government in regard to granting access to education for child refugee, because as you say, education is important, and the most important fundamental thing in the life of refugee during the time of crisis. So the decree itself, as you mentioned, has been very remarkable so far, but should not be the final product. Hopefully, we will see another concrete measure from our government in regard to providing right to the refugee and asylum seeker. Thank you very much, Pak Dean.
If I may, one more thing. I mean, there are governments who have signed the Refugee Convention, but they don't do much. And you have also, as Anne said, governments that didn't sign the UN Refugee Convention, but they're doing much more. So I think the government of Indonesia is on the right track. It's progressing. And as Anne said, probably, and we hope that in future, the government will sign the UN Refugee Convention. But things are changing. Year by year, things are changing. Things are improving. I think we're on the right track. And as I said, together, UN organizations, the academia, the NGOs, the advocacy groups, we can make it happen.
Okay, that's a good news for us to hear that actually there is a good progress from Indonesian government to providing access for education to refugee children. So hopefully another more breakthrough coming up next in time of new normal scenario. So now, thank you, Pak Dean.
One more thing is, if I
Yeah.
can say it, because I mentioned UN organization, the academia, the NGOs, but we do really have a lot of support from the governments, from the central government as well. PoluCam was on board with us for a long time. The Refugee Task Force joined IM from location to location to advocate for the school, for the education, for the children. So there is support from the government as well.
Yeah. From our research, we've been hearing a lot of story that PolHukam and some other government agency has been very supportive in terms of ensuring the right of a child refugee in having formal education. So hopefully this will continue and also even more better in the future. Okay, thank you, Pak Dean.
Thank you.
Yeah, now we will be welcoming our next speaker from Suaka, Miss Siska Agadianti, the chairperson of Suaka. Halo, Mbak Rizka.
Halo, Mbak Karina.
Apa kabar?
Kabar baik, Mbak Karina.
So how's work from home so far?
Well, apparently I'm not working from home.
Wow,
Still have to
okay.
go outside.
Uh-huh.
But Mbak Karina, can I speak half and bahasa and also in English? Maybe
Sure,
at some point in
sure.
English and some
Yeah.
point in bahasa Indonesia.
For sure. I'll be helping you later. I will catch some important point and maybe we'll deliver that in English. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you
sure.
very
So,
much.
thank you, Mbak Rizka, for joining us today and also for collaborating with us for this event.
Thank you for welcoming us.
Now, previously we have been hearing the story from Bapak Sukamta representing Indonesian House of Representatives. We also have hearing both story and experiences from UNHCR and IOM, the key actor in this issue for sure. Now, I've been curious. I think all the participants are also curious to hear the opinion and also experiences felt by the civil society organization like Suaka. So, what facts have been Suaka found in the field regarding the protection of refugee rights in time of crisis? Do you see any sort of challenges in advocating the refugee rights during the time of crisis? Please, Mbak Rizka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Karina. So maybe I will start by introducing Suaka first ya. Jadi Suaka ini adalah perkumpulan organisasi masyarakat sipil. Jadi kami bentuknya perkumpulan, so we are an association, we are member based. Ada anggota organisasi, ada juga anggota individu. Saya termasuk anggota individu dan saya termasuk volunteer di Suaka yang kebetulan trusted by all members that I can sit on the structure as the chairperson. So Suaka works on 3 different fields. Tiga hal yang Suaka lakukan adalah legal aid atau bantuan hukum. Bantuan hukum ini both in immigration, in police, or within the UNHCR RSD process. Jadi di awal Suaka berdiri di tahun 2012, itu Suaka memulai dengan melayani mereka yang mau RSD process within UNHCR. Suaka assist them within the RSD process. Terus kemudian ada tantangannya nih kan, semakin jauh kita punya tantangan soal resettlement dan juga soal mereka yang tinggal di Indonesia terus bersentuhan dengan hukum domestik. Jadi ada juga kami mendampingi mereka yang di kepolisian ataupun in the police office or in the immigration. And the second one is the campaign. So we also have a vibrant campaign program. So we want that Indonesian people, not only the small group of people working or concerned on this issue, we want everybody look at in this issue as well. And the last one is the advocacy. We also assist the Perpres, the development of Perpres since 2011. Jadi pas di awal Perpres itu di draft di 2011, itu Suaka juga terlibat in the consultation meeting with the NGOs during the Perpres drafting, dan Suaka memberikan masukan cukup banyak sebenarnya waktu itu masukannya, karena draft awal itu menurut kami tidak sesuai sekali dengan prinsip-prinsip hak asasi manusia. Tapi kemudian draft yang terakhir keluar ini, bahkan di pasal 1-nya itu mengadopsi betul-betul definisi dari pengungsi, definisi pengungsi dari Konvensi 51 itu sendiri. Tapi memang masih disayangkan ya, bahwa pemerintah masih melakukan pendekatan national security threat towards refugee. Ini bisa dilihat dari ranhamnya pemerintah. Yang terakhir saya nggak tahu nih yang final seperti apa, tapi draft terakhir yang Suaka dapatkan bahwa pengungsi dan pencari suaka itu masih dikategorikan sama dengan teroris yang datang ke Indonesia misalnya, atau pencegahan teroris itu masih dikategorikan sama. Nah, sepakat sebenarnya dengan Pak Sukamta. I agree with Pak Sukamta bahwa this Perpres 125/2016 ini tidak memadai untuk hak-hak pengungsi. So we have previous hearing with Komnas HAM, with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, audiensi dengan Komnas HAM dan Kementerian Luar Negeri ini, dan ternyata yang mendraft leading sektornya kan dari Kemenlu ya, karena ini merupakan turunan dari Undang-Undang Hubungan Luar Negeri, yang mana Kemenlu juga leading sektor. Jadi dari Kemenlu sendiri juga mengakui, so MFA also admit that this Perpres was developed because of the emergency situation. Kenapa kemudian ditandatangani tahun 2016? Karena di 2015-16 kita punya Rohingya boats coming cukup banyak. Lalu kemudian akhirnya bisa di-push untuk ditandatangani di tahun 2016. Dan Kementerian Luar Negeri juga bilang bahwa iya, ini sebenarnya Perpresnya memang cuma untuk di masa imigrasi ketika ada pengungsi yang mau masuk ke Indonesia. So if the refugee wants to come to enter our territory, how we gonna intercept them? It is on the Perpres. And if we intercept them, what we gonna do to them? If they are short, how we have to treat them, how we place them into the place, and how we supervise them, and how we put our security measures to them. It's what on the Perpres. Tapi benar setuju dengan Pak Sukamta bahwa ini tidak memadai untuk hak-hak pengungsinya, di mana kemudian tadi juga Pak Dian juga udah bilang hak pendidikan itu sangat penting banget, tapi ini juga tidak diakomodir dari Perpres gitu kan. Terus kemudian hak untuk livelihood, tadi Ibu N juga sudah menyinggung bahwa ini juga penting untuk diadres, tapi kemudian tidak ada di dalam Perpres itu. Jadi Perpres ini benar-benar prosedural banget. Ketika ada pengungsi masuk, bagaimana caranya di-intercept, bagaimana caranya diamankan, bagaimana cara ditempatkan, terus diawasinya gimana. Itu semacam prosedur. Tapi kemudian untuk pengungsi yang sudah ada di Indonesia, yang sudah lama gitu ada di Indonesia, itu gimana? Nggak ada peraturannya. Lalu kemudian nggak ada peraturan yang menjamin hak-hak mereka juga selama ada di sini. Tapi kalau misalnya ada wacana dengan imigrasi ya, dan itu juga ada di Perpres sebenarnya, untuk imigrasi mengeluarkan kartu identification card from immigration. Jadi mungkin nanti pengungsi they have two cards, different cards, one from UNHCR, one from immigration gitu ya. We don't really know when this data will be integrated, so they have only one card gitu. Karena kalau dari diskusi dengan UNHCR dan imigrasi, they always have different numbers. Jadi ada ketidaksamaan juga antara bagaimana mengambil kebijakan, lalu kemudian bagaimana yang di lapangan nih yang mengeksekusi untuk melakukan hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan proteksi atau perlindungan terhadap pengungsi dan pencari suaka. Tapi kalau misalnya Pak Sukamta nggak setuju, nggak apa-apa ya Pak ya. Nggak setuju dengan ketika perlu ada peraturan bahwa mengembalikan pengungsi ke negara asal jika mereka melebihi batas waktu tertentu. Mungkin nanti di immigration card-nya itu ada masa berlaku seperti di KTP gitu ya. Meskipun KTP sekarang mungkin seumur hidup ya. Kalau misalnya ada masa berlakunya cuma 5 tahun, 10 tahun, terus kemudian dia harus dikeluarkan dari wilayah Indonesia, itu saya rasa itu akan menyalahi prinsip dari non-refoulement itu sendiri. Jadi harus benar-benar berhati-hati sekali ketika misalnya pengungsi itu diberikan batas waktu di Indonesia, atau bahkan menempatkan pengungsi di satu tempat. Gitu, menempatkan pengungsi di satu tempat semuanya. Kita tahu bahwa we have experience in, I think it's 2013 or I forgot what year, in the Medan IDC, where both fishers from Myanmar and also Rohingya refugees, IDC put them in one place. Jadi orang Myanmar dan orang Rohingya ditempatkan di satu tempat di Rudenim. Lalu yang terjadi apa? 8 orang meninggal dunia. Kita nggak bisa memastikan nih kalau dengan 14,000 people we put them in one place and what will gonna happen. Kita juga bisa melihat yang ada di Nauru misalnya, yang ada di camp-camp lain misalnya. Bagaimana dengan penanganannya, dan juga ketika menyatukan pengungsi yang berasal dari different backgrounds gitu ya, terus disatukan di satu tempat, malah jangan-jangan mereka bisa menimbulkan friksi-friksi lainnya gitu. Lalu juga tadi sepakat banget dengan Pak Sukamta soal bagaimana membuka akses bagi para pengungsi ini untuk setidaknya memenuhi kebutuhan mereka sehari-hari gitu. Kita tahu di COVID-19 ini orang Indonesia aja udah kesusahan ya, apalagi pengungsi. Dari sebelum COVID pun mereka sudah kesusahan gitu. Jadi nggak semua pengungsi memang ternyata adalah orang kaya, nggak semua pengungsi memang memiliki saving atau memiliki keluarga yang cukup berada gitu di negara asalnya yang bisa mensupport mereka yang ada di sini. Karena banyak juga, there are many refugees who really rely on the support of other organization or other people. Jadi memang benar-benar kita tidak bisa mengeneralisir atau menyamaratakan bahwa pengungsi-pengungsi ini sebenarnya mampu. Jadi untuk membuka akses terhadap bagaimana mereka memenuhi kebutuhannya sendiri, entah itu mungkin tadi disebutkan part-time working atau seperti apa, begitu pekerjaannya informal, itu pasti akan sangat berharga sekali untuk para pengungsi ini. Nah, kalau untuk hal ini berarti ada yang harus dilakukan oleh pemerintah, yaitu memberikan atau membuat program-program yang bisa memberdayakan pengungsi. Ada klausulnya kan juga di Perpres untuk menggunakan pendanaan dari APBN untuk penanganan pengungsi dan pencari suaka. Tapi ini kan dari 2016 ya. Waktu di tahun 31 Desember lagi 2016. Jadi begitu waktu masuk ke 2017, kita bisa memaklumi bahwa oke, berarti DIPA-nya ditandatangani 2016, Desember 2016, berarti DIPA-nya belum selesai nih di 2017. Tapi kemudian 2017, 18, 19, 20 kok belum ada ya. Terus udah gitu ada COVID lagi. Nah, ini jadi mungkin jadi lebih memperberat kali ya untuk mengatur DIPA itu sendiri. Nah, apa yang bisa kita lakukan juga sebagai masyarakat sipil, what we can do as a civil society, and also maybe the government, if they want to issue some program, is I suggest is the promoting social cohesion. Jadi bagaimana masyarakat Indonesia dan juga pengungsi ini bisa bersatu dalam satu komunitas gitu kan, karena kita tahu bahwa resettlement rate is decreasing significantly. Terus bagaimana mereka harus tinggal di sini. Jadi Suaka ini setidaknya di tahun 2020 ini ada 27 kasus setidaknya. Itu sampai 1 Juni kemarin, 27 kasus. Dan cuma 1 kasus yang RSD. So we handle 27 cases and only 1 cases is about RSD process. And other 26 cases is about domestic law cases. Either private law, entah itu perdata ataupun pidana. Jadi ini kelihatan banget. UNHCR also has their own data, which said from the previous meeting that in 2008 it's only several cases of domestic law, but in 2009 it's multiplied 5 times. Jadi memang dengan resettlement rate, dengan keberadaan mereka di sini, ya kita harus mengakui bahwa pengungsi dan mencari suaka, they are exist in Indonesia, then we have to do something for it. Dan pelibatan masyarakat, engagement with NGO itu juga penting banget. Bagaimana kalau misalnya NGO itu dibatasi pelibatannya. Itu yang sebenarnya ketika Perpres awal dikeluarkan, itu masyarakat sipil agak mengkritisi itu, karena ketika pengungsi datang, ketika masyarakat sipil mau merespon, itu ada semacam resistance, sedikit, sebaiknya tidak masyarakat sipil, sebaiknya entah imigrasi atau polisi gitu, bukan masyarakat sipil. Karena kalau masyarakat sipil, entah itu bisa dilaporkan ke polisi atau bisa terkena entah itu pelaporan dari siapa, dan tidak bisa justru untuk menghandle refugee dengan tangannya sendiri. Kita bisa lihat di tahun 2015 itu justru malah yang menangani pengungsi pertama kali adalah para nelayan, bukan pemerintah. Karena waktu itu nelayan lebih cepat, birokrasinya tidak selama itu. Ketika nelayan ada di laut dan dia melihat ada kapal yang butuh pertolongan, ya sudah ditarik. Jadi tidak perlu ada lagi telepon kepala kelautan, dinas kelautan atau pol air mana gitu kan. Jadi langsung masyarakat sipil sebenarnya akan lebih cepat untuk merespon masa krisis dibanding dengan harus benar-benar rely on the government themselves. Itu engagement dengan NGO yang perlu, pelibatan masyarakat dan engagement dengan NGO yang perlu dilakukan. Dan satu hal yang penting lagi adalah ketika resettlement itu semakin lama, terus kemudian mereka selain bisa terekspos dengan domestic law, adalah tentang pendidikan anak-anak itu sendiri. Makin lama mereka di sini, berarti makin lama juga mereka mendapatkan pendidikan formal. Children attend in public school, but correct me if I'm wrong, Pak Dian, there is no legitimate certificate, acknowledged by the institution if they go to the third country. It's a good progress. I mean, kalau misalnya anak-anak refugee itu bisa masuk ke dalam public school, terus kemudian menerima pengajaran, it's a really good progress. The next step is how we can make their attendance in the school to be legitimate. They have the certificate, so can they brought that certificate to the third country where they can continue their school. Ada memang beberapa kasus di mana pengungsi itu mendapatkan sertifikat, tapi ternyata bukan yang formal ya. Jadi ketika dibawa ke negara ketiga itu tidak bisa dipakai. Jadi kan sayang sekali waktunya di sini. Nah, kasus yang terjadi selama COVID yang paling sering adalah tentang refugee yang ditahan 1 kali 24 jam ini. Karena mereka, so their UNHCR ID card is expired, and then because UNHCR is working from home, which we also think is necessary for them also to work from home, but the immigration still arrest refugee because of the expired of the UNHCR ID card. But then it's only need a communication and then it's all clear. So it means that we need communication better with those who are on the field, like in the Kanim level, to implement the current policies. Terus juga ada rate. Ini ada rate untuk pengungsi yang berasal sebenarnya dia mengikuti satu komunitas yang didirikan di China. Terus kemudian mereka datang ke Indonesia dan meregister diri sebagai pengungsi dan mencari suaka. Tapi kemudian mereka sudah lama di sini, sudah di Indonesia sudah lebih dari 1 tahun. Tapi kemudian kena raid oleh imigrasi karena apa? Karena mereka dianggap karena mereka ditakuti membawa virus karena mereka adalah orang-orang Cina. Padahal mereka tinggal lebih dari setahun di Indonesia. Yang artinya mereka juga tidak terpapar di Cinanya langsung gitu ya, kalaupun terpapar. Jadi memang selama masa krisis ini ada banyak banget hal-hal yang jadi perhatian ekstra, termasuk ketika harus ada pendampingan di polisi, karena terakhir juga, so the last case that we have is a domestic case in Tangerang, the person now in Tangerang. We already sent a letter actually to IOM, but we haven't received any response from IOM related to the case. Dan itu menjadi tantangan sendiri. It's a challenge for us, because during this crisis, during this pandemic, we also have to save ourselves when meeting with somebody in a public space. So, jadi untuk sementara itu dulu mungkin ya Mbak Karina. So now, I give floor to you. Thank you. Mbak Rina, you are still muted.
Okay. Thank you, Mbak Rizka, for the very insightful explanation from the experiences of Suaka. So yes, what we have got from the explanation that Suaka has been very active dealing with refugee issues for a very long time, including being an important actor in overseeing the making of presidential decree. But however, ironically, refugees are still equated with terrorists, if I'm not mistaken. And in fact, that presidential decree does not adequately accommodate the fulfillment of refugee right and asylum seeker in the practice. And the decree itself is very procedural, often forgetting the mechanism on how to dealing with refugees who have long been residing in Indonesia. So most of the time, their rights are often being upheld. And one important step for Indonesian government is to ensure social cohesion, right, Mbak Rizka? The aim is to correct the misunderstanding and misinterpretation of refugee issue among the local community. And the goal is to create a more harmonious relationship between refugee and local community. So the future, it can make such a conducive atmosphere that can support the governments in taking a very another concrete measure in the future. So I have some question, Bariska, for you, if you don't mind. Just following up some of your explanation.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry. So there are refugee. Sorry, I have mistakenly placed my question. Sorry. In your observation, Bariska, is there any positive cases among the refugee who are found to be positively affected by COVID-19 in the field? Have you found any kind of cases like that? And how to deal with the refugees so far?
So Suaka coverage is actually Jakarta and surrounding area. So, but we got many information from outside of Jabodetabek. Dan beberapa yang melaporkan, some of them who made a report to us. We made a clarification actually to IOM and also to UNHCR whether this information is true or not. And also, we are kind of making sure that in the shelter of IOM, also they provide sanitation, a good sanitation, the hand wash, portable hand wash, and also the maybe mask or maybe hand sanitizer. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, selama ini there's no report on the positive case, but surely those who are in Makassar, in the respective area, those who knows better, they are the one who knows better. But in Jakarta and surrounding area, we haven't find any case on that. Maybe Miss Ann or Ibu Ann or Pak Dijan can clarify on that also.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Rizka, for the information. So I have some other question for you actually, but maybe we can follow up this question in the next session. So I will be moving to our last speaker. Thank you, Mbak Rizka, for your time.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so now I'm welcoming Mas Yudizar Adiputra from International Institute of International Study, Universitas Gajah Mada. Halo, Mas Yudi.
Hi, Karin.
Hi. So Mas Yudi is actually a very active and vocal academician and also researcher in the issue of refugee and migration. So I'm expecting a lot of insightful sharing of opinion from you regarding this whole phenomenon. And also we have heard the experiences from the representative of Indonesian House of Representatives and also from SUAKA, from IOM, from UNHCR. Now, Mas, as an academician and researcher, what do you think about this whole phenomenon of refugee in time of crisis? How do you see the crisis has actually affected the refugee? Do you see any effort made so far by government and other relevant key actors have been quite optimal or successful in protecting the right of refugee in time of crisis? Please, Mas, the time is yours.
Thank you, Karin, and thank you for all other speakers before me. I've been listening closely, and I think a lot of insights. Got a lot of insights from previous speakers on this, but I'd like to begin probably by reflecting on how do we imagine the new normal look like, especially in terms of refugees and asylum seekers in Indonesia. One of the first things that came into my mind was the fact that the COVID-19 has should make our way of thinking about refugees and asylum seekers a little bit differently. We often think of refugees, especially when we talk about, often think about government as well as many Indonesian society in general. We often think of refugees and asylum seekers in terms of citizens and non-citizens, people of Indonesia and outsiders. And therefore, a lot of discussions in regards to asylum seekers and refugees are always about what sort of rights should be afforded to refugees and what sort of rights should be reserved exclusively for citizens. So that's kind of the mindset in some of the policy discourse that we often encounter. But I think the arrival of COVID kind of should change that, because dividing the line between citizens and non-citizens are no longer sustainable. Because obviously, when we talk about the virus does not discriminate between citizens and non-citizens. We share the physical space together in Indonesia, in many parts of Indonesia, and therefore the artificial dividing line between who are citizens and who are non-citizens, I think, should be abandoned in that regard. We cannot afford, before this, before the arrival of COVID, we can see that there are a lot of sort of like different way treating refugees and asylum seekers with the local society, a lot of vulnerable peoples and so on. In times of crisis, I think we cannot afford to leave anyone behind. Obviously, we cannot afford to leave anyone in a vulnerable position, because obviously leaving anyone in a vulnerable position against the virus, I think, would be endangering the entire society. So leaving vulnerable people behind is no longer an issue of ethical and moral implications, but also an issue of practical. There are practical implications to that in times of COVID. So I think there is an interest. I think there is a strong need for us to be able to think differently in a way we talk about refugees and asylum seekers in times of COVID crisis, especially as we enter the new normal. As I was saying, that it's no longer probably relevant to talk about citizens and non-citizens. And when we talk about, and Indonesia has, as previous speakers have already talked about, has a presidential regulation, which I think, I agree with the other speakers as well, is a good initial ground to protect refugees. And there are a lot of talks about whether we need additional measures and legal products in order to strengthen the refugee regime in Indonesia, which I would leave to legal experts to do that. But what I'd like to highlight is that probably it's also important to talk about what Rizka calls social cohesion or social inclusions in this regard. So rather than listing what are the rights that we should guarantee to refugees, how about including refugees into our society, so that it's no longer to talk about listing the kind of rights that should be provided, but then it should be included in the way in which we see refugees and asylum seekers as people who are inseparable from our society as a whole, because in fact they live in the same physical space, and therefore it's important to look at these developments from that perspective. And I think that kind of my first reflections on the arrival of COVID, the era of COVID, then the new normal, and the way in which we should see refugees and asylum seekers. And I'd like to also reflect on some of the key aspects which I gather as well from the previous speakers about what are the key issues that we should also think about when we talk about the new normal. And talked about the access to enter Indonesia, or in fact many other countries as well. There are restrictions, right to asylum versus public health concern, which should not be at the expense of one another. Both can go hand in hand, and I agree totally that public health measures can be put in place without actually, limiting the right of the people for asylum. The second aspect issue that I think was also important, which I saw also talked about by the previous speakers, with the issue of healthcare, access to healthcare services. And I think the key question is that can refugees and asylum seekers have access to healthcare, hospitals, clinics, and so on? Of course, I think the answer to these questions are varied, and the experience of refugees in terms of accessing healthcare services also have variations. If you do a quick Google search on this, there are a lot of stories from refugees who are saying that they're having bad experience, they are being rejected by hospitals and so on in order to get the necessary medical assistance. Do they have to pay for these access? Can they afford to pay for this assistance? If they are identified as suspect of COVID-19, are there any resources for isolations for them? Is there access for testing and tracing for refugees and asylum seekers? I personally, as a citizen, as a local, sometimes kind of having difficulties because we have to pay a certain amount of money in order for us to get testing, for example. So I think that's a kind of question we should also ask. There's also a question about access to health equipment. Some of the refugees and asylum seekers probably also have a need for basic necessities. They need even their basic necessities. They struggle to fulfill their basic necessities. Are they able to access health equipments, masks, sanitizers, soaps, disinfectants, and so on and so forth? And these are the kind of tools that are necessary in the new normal. And I think ensuring that they have access to these tools, I think, is very necessary. There's also an issue, the next aspect is the issue of shelters. Many of the refugees live in cramped apartments of 2 or more occupants, obviously some of the areas are overcrowding, like at Kalideres, even in Makassar, you have to stay, some of refugees need to share the rooms with other refugees, whether this is something that is sustainable in the new normal, where possibilities of transmission would be higher in these overcrowding places. So I think this is something we should also think about. There's also an issue of information. There are a lot of information about COVID-19, but they're scattered here and there, and we should be able to know where to access this information in the language that the refugees and asylum seekers understand, obviously. And I heard that there are a lot of initiatives from the communities, from the NGOs, and from refugee communities themselves that try to translate documents and information to refugees. This, like information about the emergence of new clusters, for example, that's a very time-sensitive information. If there are the emergence of new clusters of transmission of COVID-19, I think everyone needs to know about that so that they can avoid contacts and so on and so forth. So I think the need to have information dissemination as quickly as possible to all refugees, that would be very helpful. I think government has done a good job in terms of providing information, daily press briefings to the people. But I think a more bilingual approach probably would help a lot from the source of information in order to make this available to a larger audience. There's also access to education. I think there's opportunities from refugees to also participate in education, especially in light of this online learning. As previously speaking, usually schools consider their availability of seats in the class in order to admit refugees or asylum seekers into the public schools. But I think the arrival of this new era of online learning in light of COVID, I think opens up opportunities for us to include more and more refugee children in order to access basic education. Obviously, there's an issue of livelihood, income. They are not allowed to work. It was difficult for them before COVID. It'd be harder, also even harder after COVID come, especially when they cannot fend for themselves and rely on donors, rely on charity, relies on informal work that are not certain. I think this also, I think a lot of good points have been raised by the previous speakers, and I totally agree that it's important for us to allow refugees to be able to fend for themselves, to find work, meaningful work that is sustainable for them in the future, especially in this kind of crisis. There's also an issue of, I think, a stress on the issue on social solidarity that we have. Don't get me wrong, host communities have been showing great solidarity all this time, but we have to also understand that the local community also have suffered loss of livelihoods and financial and social stress because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and therefore this is something that we should also strengthen and double our efforts in order to sort of like strengthen and use this crisis as an opportunity to strengthen and go together to release the stress of one another. And also there's an issue of social safety net, government program. I think questions would be like, does government program reach refugees, cash transfers, and probably opportunities for trainings, opportunities for jobs. And I think it's also an important question whether government programs can be extended to refugees, in what way they can be extended to refugees and asylum seekers. And I think these sort of questions needs to be addressed as well. And I think I was just realized that unfortunately from Rizka's explanation, apparently I thought the issue of arbitrary arrest, we're done with arbitrary arrest. Apparently from Rizka's presentation, we heard that arbitrary arrests for refugees simply because the UNHCR card is expired are still happening. And I think that's very unfortunate. We shouldn't, after the Perpres, I think we shouldn't deal with that kind of arbitrary arrests any longer. So I think that's kind of a bit of a briefer summary of what I saw from the phenomenon of refugees in times of COVID. But I think aside from those points that I raised, I think one important aspect that I'd like to also emphasize is that when we talk about refugees, it's not only about when we talk about social inclusions, we're not only talking about what kind of provisions that we could provide for refugees, but at the same time, inclusions work both ways, which means that I think we also have to realize that refugees have a role to play in order to, deal with this COVID. I think there are a lot of potentials, a lot of opportunities for refugees to contribute in the strengthening of the social ties in the face of COVID-19. There are a lot of refugees, for example, who are volunteering, who are translating documents. A lot of refugees who also participate in producing protective gears for healthcare workers. They also offer help in any kind of assistance they can provide in order to, face this crisis. So I think it's important when we imagine inclusions. In the word inclusions, it's not merely about providing, but also it's about including them in the way in which we try to define this new normal. What do they think? What can they contribute? And I think that's kind of an important departure point from my point of view that when we talk about refugees after the pandemic, I think we should do away with the arbitrary distinction between citizens and non-citizens and what kind of rights, but I think we should focus on including them into the societies, having a social inclusion, having them enjoy the same kind of rights that are afforded to the society, because after all, this pandemic have created the space for all of us to share the same space, and therefore make us a little bit more, again, as I was saying in the beginning, we can no longer afford to leave anyone behind, because leaving anyone behind would obviously endanger and kind of make the society as a whole more vulnerable. I think that's what I'd like to reflect on our discussions. Karina, you're still muted. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mas Yudi. Wow, very comprehensive, I guess. So yes, it is important indeed to change our perspective about refugee and asylum seeker, not to see them as a foreigner, but also part of our society, especially in this time of crisis, in order to ensure the fulfillment of their right and protection of their life better. So if I can make a conclusion from what you have said, in welcoming the new normal, access to health services, education are among the most essential things that should be provided to refugee and asylum seeker. Some of these rights are challenged during COVID-19, but now, since government has moving forward to the new normal scenario, they should start thinking about opening, improving, and broadening the access to some of those important things so that refugee can return to their normal life just like the other citizen of Indonesia. And it's also important to provide refugees some sort of access and opportunity to becoming more independent in looking for work, for job, and also to provide for their life and finance for their life. It is important for the sustainability of their life while they are waiting for resettlement in Indonesia. And when we talk about social inclusion, this is one of the highlights that I got from your explanation. It is important not only thinking about what we can provide for those refugee and asylum seeker, but also let them actively give back to the community. Because in reality, refugee and asylum seeker in Indonesia, most of them are very skillful. They could be very helpful in this time of crisis in terms of giving back to the community and supporting the government to just performing their what they have, what they got, the skill that they have. Maybe some of them have a skill in terms of health, providing health services and so on and so forth. So maybe in terms of social inclusion, it is important to let them be active and provide back to the community. Thank you, Mas Yudi. Okay, so now I think this is concluding the first section of our discussion. Now we are moving to the second session of our discussion this afternoon. So now I have some questions to follow up to 5 of our speakers following their explanation before, because the first session we have some sort of limited time to follow up some sort of their explanation. So now maybe I can start with, I'll begin with Pak Sukamta. Hi, Pak Sukamta. Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Pak,
I mute my speaker.
I saw you have been actively responding to some of the questions from our participant in the chat box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did.
Wow. Maybe it will be very great if you can a little bit explain what you have provide as an answer to our participant in the chat box. Let me take a look. Okay, so the question is, setahu saya concern soal pengungsi di parlemen belum banyak. Beberapa kali keluhan soal kondisi pengungsi di masa pandemi ini belum dapat respon yang memadai. Ini juga yang ingin saya tanyakan, Bapak, apakah dalam masa krisis ini dan memasuki new normal pernah ada pembahasan dalam rapat-rapat yang diadakan oleh DPR, khususnya Komisi 1 mengenai isu pengungsi ini, Pak? Apakah pernah ada pembahasan mengenai penganggaran dana khusus untuk mengurus pengungsi, hal seperti itu, dan bagaimana Pak yang terjadi di dalam lingkaran DPR sendiri mengenai penanganan pengungsi ini? Silakan Bapak.
Iya, the question is very simple, but the answer is not that quite simple. So regarding the refugee issues in the parliament up until now, it's quite not easy to find people who concern enough to the refugee issue. So up until now, I don't see any other member of the parliament spread from the various parties that have concern enough about the refugees. So sometimes I raise the issues, but the response from my colleagues is not very well as we expected. So apalagi dalam situasi pandemi sekarang ini ya, most of the people at the moment only talk about the effect of the pandemic on Indonesian economic and Indonesian people. So even now, people or government less concerned on health of people and the life of the Indonesian people, and more concerned on economic issues and economical matter. So I'm a bit concerned about the refugees because every single department had been and will be cut off their budget. So it is not easy to say that our government is at the moment at the better shape to talk about the refugees. So I think that's all what I can say, because it is a very delicate matter in terms of humanity, but in terms of political issue, it is not many people concerned about this.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So basically, there is
Mbak Karina.
Yeah.
Mbak Karina ke Pak Sukamta, can I follow up? Pak Sukamta, kapan nih UU?
Sure, Mbak Rizka.
Mbak Rizka.
Please.
Kapan nih Pak Sukamta UU perlindungan pengungsi untuk masuk prolegnas? Mungkin ada prioritas dari parlemen.
Ya, itulah kita. Jadi so far saya belum menemukan mitra untuk mendorong itu. Jadi sampai sekarang maka belum masuk ke dalam prolegnas. Itu waktu PP muncul di 2016 itu kan termasuk saya dorong agak kuat waktu itu ke Menlu karena kita menghadapi persoalan Rohingya. Ketika PP itu keluar, saya agak komplain kenapa ini isinya adalah hanya untuk mengatur pemerintah kita, tapi tidak mengatur soal refugee. Nah, ternyata memang diperlukan payung hukum yang lebih tinggi, yaitu undang-undang untuk kita bicara agak lebih komprehensif. Karena kalau kita hanya punya pilihan menerima atau konvensi 51
panjang
atau
ya, Pak?
kita tidak. Nah, itu terlalu harganya mungkin bagi pemerintah kita terlalu mahal gitu, sehingga mereka tidak cukup welcome ya, karena kan konsekuensinya banyak sekali. Maka saya pikir kita perlu membuat undang-undang sendiri untuk mengatur pengungsi yang datang ke Indonesia, karena jumlahnya makin hari makin banyak, sementara payung hukum yang ada itu belum memadai. Nah, saya kira ini PR. Saya berharap begini, Mbak Rizka, kalau ada opini-opini yang bisa diperkuat di luar parlemen, mudah-mudahan itu akan membuat lebih banyak orang yang terbuka dan lebih concern untuk ikut memikirkan soal refugee ini. Memikirkan refugee ini kan menyangkut kemanusiaan, tapi bagi negara kan seolah-olah ini orang lain gitu. Jadi ini PR yang tidak mudah. Perlu ada penyadaran yang serius dan terus-menerus.
Opini yang diperkuat di luar parlemen means mungkin campaign gitu ya untuk orang Indonesia.
Ya,
tapi
mungkin media sosial atau media bahwa ada persoalan kemanusiaan yang serius yang perlu diurus oleh pemerintah Indonesia.
Nah, kalau di dalam parlemennya sendiri gimana, Pak? Maaf ini Mbak Karina, aku jadi penasaran soalnya.
Ya, kalau di parlemen, ya itu, saya belum menemukan partner untuk dialog TikTok soal pengungsi ini.
Oke. Berarti memang harus cari mitra ya, Pak ya?
Iya.
Allies nih.
Tidak cukup. Iya.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Pak Sukamta and Mbak Rizka for the very insightful explanation in regard to the discussion about refugee, the protection of refugees' right within the circle of House of Representatives. So apparently, there is not much of discussion about refugee themselves within the circle of House of Representatives, because as mentioned by Pak Sukamta, there has been some sort of problematic condition where the concern of our government right now is very divided, and there are some sort of consideration that need to be taken into account in regard to ratifying the convention, and also in providing a stronger legal umbrella for making new regulation in terms of protecting the right of refugee. So, and it is important also to have the stronger team within the House of Representatives to start voicing about this issue, because much of the focus within the House of Representatives is not about the refugee protection right now. So maybe in the near future, we will see some sort of fresh air regarding this issue from the House of Representatives. So thank you very much, Pak Sukamta, and thank you, Mbak Rizka, for helping me delivering some question to Pak Sukamta.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Okay, so I have some other question. I would like to address it to our speaker from UNHCR and IOM. I have previously delivering this question to Mbak Rizka about the cases of refugees that are being positively affected by COVID-19. Maybe the data in Suaka is not really reflecting what happened in the field. So maybe our speaker, Ms. N, can help me to share what happened in the field to our participant. Is there any case of positive victim of COVID-19 among the refugee, and how to deal with that if in fact there is some positive case affecting the refugee? Please, Ms. Aim.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for all the interesting presentation that this forum have had. It has been really insightful, and I'm happy to be on such a great panel. With regard to the specific question on infected refugees, Dejan, he will talk about the refugees that live in IOM accommodation centers. I will talk about the refugees that so-called live independently, meaning basically that they don't have any means and they have to take care of themselves, right? And that's why, of course, it's important that we have the advocacy granting them access to work and livelihood so they can actually take care of themselves. But on the COVID-19 and the infection, there have been refugees. Of course, they have had symptoms because COVID-19 have the same symptoms like a flu, right? Fortunately, there has been access to tests in the local puskesmas, but as the previous speaker, the researcher was mentioning, it has to be paid, right? There's no free healthcare, but at least they have access. So we have a partnership with CWS, who is our health partner, and they, together with our protection staff, have facilitated the access to tests. But fortunately, none of them have so far tested positive. There are some that have had to go into actual care because their symptoms seem to become severe, and then while they were waiting for the result to be issued. But I think in general, so far we have been lucky, but of course this is not guaranteeing that it will continue. But I think in general, what Indonesia has done in terms of practical protection is that even though we have said that the legal framework is not sufficient, Indonesia has not signed the 1951 convention. So legally speaking, there are serious gaps. And when there are legal gaps, you don't have a strong basis, you don't have predictability. But I think what Indonesia has done is at the practical level, they have supported refugees on some fronts. So for example, on health, they have not said no to refugees who have had their UNHCR ID card to access healthcare, but it needs to be paid. So that's why UNHCR, we are depending on aid, like IOM is. We are not, if there are no donors, there will be no support to refugees, right? And that is just an important reminder that in this current crisis of COVID-19, donations are going to be smaller, right? Countries are looking at themselves. They're thinking about their own situation. So this is also now the time to include refugees as economic and social agent in the Indonesian societies, because they can contribute to the economy and they can take care of themselves. If they can take care of themselves by doing some jobs and thereby contributing to the local economy, UNHCR and IOM, we would need less help. We would need less funds. So there is a clear logic in granting access to refugees and include them in the society. And I think that this is the way to move forward. But of course, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. Who are those refugees? They are foreigners. And I think that is the front that we need to work on. We need to work on raising the awareness and open people's mind. And this is not only an issue in Indonesia, it's an issue all over the world. But I think this global pandemic has shown us that solidarity is possible. You know, the global pandemic has actually shown all the people in the world what it means to live in uncertainty, what it means when your daily life is completely upside down. These are elements of the daily life for a refugee. All ordinary people have got to feel on their own, in their own self and their own bodies, the fear and the uncertainty. And I think, and I hope, that could bring humanity closer together. But let me just also say, it is, of course, very sad that there's not more discussion at the governmental level about refugees. And I really welcome our colleague here from the parliament. And I think the fact that you are here shows that we are already starting in the right direction. There is one from the parliament who is interested. This is the best. And let me just add to this. In December 2019, we had a global refugee forum for the first time in Geneva, where we had thousands of participants from governments, businesses, refugees, private sector. It was a follow-up to the Global Compact on Refugees adopted in New York in 2018 that is focusing also on self-reliance and inclusion and support to host countries like Indonesia. But there, governments around the world, they came with different delegations. Indonesia went with a very powerful and important delegation led by the president of Commission 1. And there, Indonesia made a number of pledges and commitments, one of which, for example, it is to effective implementation of the presidential regulation that we have talked about. It is also to design a refugee empowerment program in cooperation with UNHCR and IOM. So a refugee empowerment program is the self-reliance activity we have talked about. They also committed to strengthen international cooperation through dialogues with countries of origin, transit and destination on durable solutions to discuss burden sharing and shared responsibility. And I think there are some other pledges, but I think those pledges, these are our roadmap. This is how we can engage with the authorities and say, let us work together on how to make this happen. But of course, we need to be patient. And that's just the way it is. Let us not talk about next week, next month. Let us talk about where do we want to be in the next 5 years, you know? And the thing is that during the World Refugee Day celebrations that we have had that started a couple of days ago, a lot of activities are taking place in Indonesia and around the world. We have live events on Instagram, Facebook. There's a lot of things going on. So I think, you know, with everybody's help, you know, we will achieve it. There is no other way. That's it. There's no other solution. Countries can't close on themselves, you know, and not help refugees. Okay, thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you, Anne, for the explanation. So, I have a question following up your explanation. In terms of contact tracing, like you mentioned, UNHCR and IOM has been very lucky enough so far to having no positive case of COVID-19 among the refugee. But of course, there are some of the cases where the refugee and asylum seeker showing symptoms leading to COVID-19 symptoms that are similar with COVID-19. So in terms of waiting for the result and things like that, what IOM or UNHCR have done in terms of contact tracing?
We have worked with our partners and with the refugees that had those symptoms to try and locate, you know, who had they been in contact with. But I think that was also needed, particularly in the beginning, because I think for all countries in the world, you know, everybody was taken aback by this pandemic. So in Indonesia also, in terms of contact tracing, in terms of testing and getting the test done fast, that was not really the case in the beginning, right? So, but now things are going much faster, and there is a much better response from the Indonesian health authority sides, the puskesmas, and the hospitals. So I think also, you know, when we look back at this COVID-19 pandemic, we can draw some good lessons learned and good practices on how, by including the refugees, because there was no alternative, you know, you need the pandemic doesn't discriminate, as our previous speaker said. We can also showcase the support and the response by the local puskesmas and the hospital as a practice to be replicated in other sectors of society, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Anne. Now I would like to move to Pak Dean. We're also curious to hear your opinion regarding this matter. We heard also from the news that there are some positive cases among refugees in Makassar. Maybe can you help us to clarify a bit about this news? Is there any positive case in reality among the refugee, and how IOM has been dealing with that in practice? Please, Pak Dean.
Okay, thank you. First, before I start, I would like to echo what Anne just said. I mean, I'm really glad to be part of this panel and part of this discussion. because this is an excellent beginning. There is no problem that cannot be solved. All we need is a discussion. And this meeting is actually the right way to address issues. So it's an excellent start. And I hope we can continue with this kind of sessions in future. To reflect on the previous speakers and also on some of the questions, access to hospitals. We have experience so far because, as I mentioned earlier, IOM is present in all locations where we have community accommodation and refugees and asylum seekers under IOM care. So we are on daily basis with the refugees. We are in daily basis with the local puskesmas, local authorities, hospital, district health offices. We were working in parallel. One was to coordinate with the local authorities in case COVID cases are identified among the population, because everybody was familiar with the population within the area. So we took proactive measures. So we went for meetings with the local puskesmas, with the hospitals, with the district health departments and offices in order to develop SOP and protocol what will happen if we have refugees and asylum seekers symptomatic or identified as positive COVID cases. In parallel, IOM was working in a scenario 2, where in case the government facilities are overcrowded, overwhelmed, we have identified isolation and quarantine places under IOM. So basically we had an alternative. If the government hospitals would have been overloaded, overwhelmed, IOM identified isolation and quarantine places that would have been supervised by IOM. Luckily, the situation in Indonesia is under control. The numbers are as they are, but it seems the government is doing a really good job with addressing these issues for the time being. There are spaces in the hospitals. The hospitals in the puskesmas are meeting the demand that it's showing at the field. We had a couple of cases which were suspected. We did the tests. We had really good cooperation, as I said, with the puskesmas and the hospitals. They were immediately admitted, quarantine, test done, and everything all of that was free of charge. So there is understanding for the local health departments in regards to the refugees and asylum seekers. I can talk only about those which are under IOM care at the moment. I'm not sure what is the experience of the so-called Tinggal Mandiri or the self-supporting population that Anne mentioned. But so far, we have really good understanding from the local health authorities where we have offices. In a couple of offices, we have suspected cases. They were tested. Luckily, all of them were negative. Indeed, we have a couple of positive cases in Makassar. And again, thanks to the local authorities and health departments, they're in quarantine. They are waiting for the second test because we want to make sure, and also the authorities want to make sure whether the tests are confirmed. If they are, they will remain in quarantine until completely healed and ready to be back to the community accommodation. Luckily, their condition is good so far, and I hope it remains that way. IOM in parallel was also investing a lot in the risk communication and community engagement. All information from WHO, from the World Health Organization, from the central government and the local government, the PSBB, was translated in all native languages of the refugees. We have interpreters, 11 interpreters under IOM, CLOs, community liaison officers, and they are translating these documents on a daily basis. Once a week, we are disseminating WhatsApp messages to the entire population under IOM care with the news, with the new information, and of course, measures how to protect themselves. Also, leaflets were distributed in all community accommodations that are under IOM care, more than 80 facilities around the country. So there are notice boards, leaflets distributed, as I said, online information, we are using the media, and information is available. I'm sure there is a space for improvement. Maybe there are gaps, but we are trying to address them as they come along. We also provide PPE. We provided masks for the population, and actually we have an outreach activity where the refugees are producing masks. So far we produced 9,000 masks, And I think 50% of that those masks went to the local population, not only for the refugee population, but those which were produced by the refugees were distributed to the underprivileged Indonesian population in the communities living around the facilities where the refugees live at the moment. I am also provided hand washing stations in all community accommodations. We also donated to the orphanages, to the underprivileged communities, and some government institutions. So we are following what is happening. We are trying to identify the gaps, and we are trying to address them as we see them. Of course, information is needed, cooperation is needed, and I'm glad that when I hear information from the others outside the box, and maybe that will help us to improve things. We also have a response plan, protocols when it comes to the tracing. I think it's a bit easier when it comes to the population under IOM care, because we know where the population lives, we know their friends, we know their relatives, we know the circles where they go around. Of course, the contact tracing outside the community accommodation, it's in the hands of the government, but so far they're doing a good job, because we had a case in Semarang that was suspected, luckily negative, but immediately the contact tracing was done within the population under IOM care, but also around the community in the neighborhood. So I think the government is doing a good job at the moment. As I said, luckily the numbers are not that high, and we hope to remain that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Dejan, for your information. It's really glad that so far the case is still under control, and there has been a very supportive measure by the local authority to contain one positive case from the refugee. Hopefully, we'll be hearing some sort of good news in the future that the spread of COVID-19 among the refugee won't go too far, and the condition among refugee will be improved following the new normal. Okay, so I think that will be the end of our second session. I have some information from the committee that we have to move to the last session, which is the question and answer session. Okay, so maybe I will start shorting the question first.
Mbak Karina.
Ya.
Mohon maaf ya, aku masuk lagi.
Ya,
so maybe I will comment short about what Mas Yudi said about the arbitrary arrest in immigration, soal penahanan semena-mena ya. Jadi mungkin ini mohon maaf juga nih sama Pak Sukamta, mungkin jangan-jangan di next future kita akan JR undang-undang keimigrasian mungkin ya. Tapi nggak tahu juga, soalnya soal penahanan imigrasi kan kita nggak seperti gimana?
Bagus kalau bisa.
Kalau bisa ya Pak.
Iya, karena itu memang ada catatan-catatan di situ yang terkait dengan refugee.
Betul, karena kayak misalnya penahanan gitu ya Pak, kalau di kepolisian kan ada prosesnya dan kita bisa memonitor proses itu. Kalau misalnya nggak sesuai, kita juga punya propam misalnya, ataupun kompolnas gitu ya. Tapi kalau imigrasi ini agak susah begitu ya Pak. Kalau misalnya if there is an arbitrary arrest done by the immigration, so what we can do, we should report only to the immigration itself atau di Kemhukam gitu ya Pak, untuk melaporkan itu sendiri. Dan prosesnya juga benar-benar sesuai. Kalau di undang-undangnya tuh bukan di undang-undang, di peraturan pemerintahnya itu sesuai dengan keputusan pejabat yang berwenang. Sesuai dengan keputusan pejabat yang berwenang. Jadi kalau misalnya pejabat yang berwenang di daerah situ adalah kepala Rudenim misalnya, ya kepala Rudenimnya yang nanti menentukan oke, dia harus ditahan. Padahal kalau misalnya di kepolisian menahan ada proses-prosesnya kan Pak, ya unsur-unsurnya yang harus dipenuhi baru kemudian dia bisa ditahan. Tapi di imigrasi ini benar-benar bisa dibilang arbitrary arrest ya.
Ini sambil nanti mungkin melanjutkan penjelasan, saya ingatkan sedikit, ini waktunya mungkin sudah mau habis, mungkin sekitar 3-5 menit Mbak. Oke.
Siap. Jadi memang untuk di arbitrary arrest ini di imigrasi memang mesti menjadi concern kita bersama karena yaitu tadi rate itu juga sering dilakukan sama imigrasi dan di dalam rate itu ada penahanan yang kemudian mengikutinya. Nah, penahanan ini juga tidak ada prosesnya sama sekali. Tiba-tiba kita mendapatkan telepon tengah malam, saya ditahan, padahal saya sudah menunjukkan UNHCR card. I've shown my UNHCR card, identity card, all the question been answered. Still I've been detained in di kantor imigrasi. Jadi proses arbitrary arrest in immigration ini memang bukan lagi abu-abu, tapi mungkin gelap banget ya Pak ya. Jadi mungkin di kedepannya kalau misalnya kita mengumpulkan tenaga dulu nih, kalau misalnya sudah terkumpul, mungkin kita bisa melakukan GR di Undang-Undang Keimigrasian itu. Itu aja sih Mbak komennya. Oh, ada satu lagi sebenarnya. Soal burdening state budget. We used to say a lot about how to make a program for the poor, kemiskinan. Tapi berapa dekade kemiskinan itu menjadi program pemerintah, terus kemudian kemiskinan itu masih tetap ada aja. Apakah kita menunggu untuk should we have to wait for the poor in Indonesia to be vanished like zero, then we can save others from other nations? Aku rasa I don't think so. Jadi selama kita bisa itu tadi ada kebijakan inklusi, memasukkan itu di dalam kebijakan-kebijakan pemerintah, kurasa itu bisa menjadi salah satu opsi. Dan juga kalau dibandingkan angkanya gitu ya, kalau bicara angka dan statistik, tidak akan membebani terlalu banyak karena ya itu tadi tidak semua pengungsi itu miskin, tidak semua pengungsi itu kaya, jadi mungkin ada proses yang bisa dilakukan untuk memfilter yang mana yang memang membutuhkan bantuan dari pemerintah, yang mana yang bisa bertahan dengan sendiri. Itu sih, itu aja singkatnya.
Makasih, terima kasih banyak Mbak Rizka, Pak Sukamta, beberapa tambahan penjelasannya. Thank you very much for the additional messages. Now we are entering the third session. We have some question here. Some of the question has been answered by Pak Sukamta before through the chat discussion. Now, sorry. Okay. Okay, so this is like one question from Alisa Tasha. This question is actually addressed to our speaker from UNHCR, IOM, and also Pak Sukamta from the Indonesian House of Representatives. The question is, I don't know, can the Tobing Dio maybe or friend from Suaka help me to share the question to public chat box, because this has been delivered to me privately, but I cannot really share the question through the chat box, public chat box. Alisa, if you hear me, can you please share your question to the chat box, public chat box, please? So our panelists could hear and could read the question.
Maybe you can read it.
Okay. No? Yeah. Sure. Okay, so I managed to share it to everyone. Okay. Okay, so the coronavirus pandemic has deepened the plight of people fleeing war, conflict, and persecution. And as the country battle to protect their population and economy, fundamental norms of refugee and human rights law are at risk. So maybe this is could be delivered first to Ms. N. What is the best way to manage the border restriction in a way that also respect international human rights and refugee protection standard, including through quarantine and health checks?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a very good question. But I think the person who has asked the question has already indicated the part of the answer, because the answer is that the asylum seekers need to be treated as as any other person who would need to be checked whether they have got the COVID-19 or not. So there is the possibility of having a quarantine. So if somebody arrives and seeks asylum, the person can go through the procedures that are very well established now in Indonesia with the protocols related to quarantine and all the health related checks in order to see whether they, and the test in order to check whether they have got the virus. So I think that there is no contradiction between respecting international refugee law and taking care of the absolutely legitimate public health concerns. So it is really straightforward, I think, but we will have to see how it will be evolving as we move on, because as I said, the last arrival we had was on the 5th of March. So the question is also, why is that, right? Why is there not any arrival? It's true that the number of arrivals in Indonesia have gone down a lot the last 5-6 years. So there is a downgoing trend in terms of arrivals, but still, is it because obviously there has not been a lot of traffic in terms of means of transport? So that can also be a reason. The displacement and the refugees have continued to flee, but they are probably only fleeing now to the neighboring countries. As I also said in my first remarks, it's mainly neighboring countries of the big refugee situations that the people and refugees are fleeing to. So we might see after some months that there will be some arrivals again. So I think that's some answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. N. Pak Deyan, maybe you have something to add for this question?
Yep, thank you. I mean, managing the borders, migration, refugees, asylum seekers, let's be honest, we cannot stop the migration. Migration is in the human nature. That makes our existence. We move around since we exist. People move from village to city, city to city, country to country, continents. Especially today in the 21st century when traveling, it's much easier than it was in the past. So we cannot stop migration, but we can find ways to manage it so everyone can benefit. The countries, the ones that are moving, and we need to make it beneficial for everyone. When it comes to the borders and the IOM is also looking to assist the Ministry of Social Affairs and Imigrasi. We are looking into the point of entries because there are point of entries, isolation and quarantine places, and we are trying to address not only the refugees and asylum seekers, but also Indonesian migrant workers coming back to the country. So we are looking into developing SOP and protocols for the Ministry of Social Affairs and Imigrasi to better monitor and manage the isolation and quarantine places at the point of entry. We also donated some equipment and PPE for the RPTC shelter in Jakarta. And that's why I'm saying we're in a regular contact with the authorities, how we can contribute even more. Refugees and asylum seekers is all part of our work that we work in Indonesia and things that we are looking in. In parallel, we are also trying to assist the local population and the migrant workers coming back to Indonesia.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Deyan. Maybe last from our speaker, Pak Sukamta. Is there any other thing you'd like to add for this particular question? Okay, so maybe there's some technical problem. Yeah, so due to the time constraint,
Mbak Karina, maaf
sorry.
Pak Sukamta masih di mute tadi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Basically, I agree with what Tian said, that we have to respect people who move from place to places. But in this time being, I think every single country has every difficulties how to protect their own people and also economics. But in terms of refugees, we have to find a way to make them protected, and we allow them to stay in the country, and also we have to keep them in the state of healthy. So the SOP in especially in Indonesia, we have an SOP to every single person who enter this country from abroad, no matter what status they have. So every single person have to follow the procedure. But the main problem, I think, because in Indonesia we have so many borders and entry point, formally and informally, so that's make the situation more difficult for the officials to allow the to make the people who enter the Indonesia keep in a good health, in a better procedure and manner, I think. So it is our challenge together, and we are very pleased if the NGOs like IOM or UNHCR can help us to provide some assistance on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Sukamta. So having a contribution from other relevant stakeholders such as UNHCR and IOM is also important to support the work of government. Okay, I apologize because there's a time constraint. We are actually receiving a lot of important and also interesting question from the participant, but due to time constraint, we can also only accommodate one more question before we come to the end of the event. So this is like the last question, but this also connected to the last message. How do we citizen and refugee could prepare for welcoming the new normal, to enter the new normal hand in hand and to support each other? So maybe I'd like to address this question to Mbak Rizka from Suaka. What do you think, Mbak? How do we citizen, and how also the refugee collaborating with the community could prepare for welcoming the new normal?
Welcoming the new normal. I think to be cohesive, to be included within the society. So an NGO, JRS in Bogor, having a really beautiful program, which is about together with the refugee and also with the local society, have a food meals together, sit down, and then talk to each other and ask about who are you and what are you doing, and having understanding between refugee community and also between Indonesia, refugee community and also Indonesia. I think that's the most important things that we have to do to make a really many forums, making a forums for refugee and to Indonesian to talk together and to discuss what happened and what they need, and also what we can do. Also, we are not we are not got to have everything, right? So we also have a constraint. We also have a burden. We also have another responsibilities. So, but we also have resources to help those in need. So I guess for new normal, I guess we can just approach each other through media, social media, and also Suaka develop information portal on our website on COVID. It's in suaka.or.id, also in several different languages. Those who want to access information on COVID-19 can go to that website also, suaka.or.id. But importantly is social distancing doesn't mean that you have to disconnect to one to another. You still can be connected through communication, social media, and also through a phone call or anything. It's just we need to, again, following the health procedure protocol to maintain ourselves also healthy. But I think the first step is to include refugee within our community and to engage with them. I guess so.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Rizka. So Mbak Rizka has highlighting the importance of social cohesion as one measure to that need to be taken into account in welcoming the new normal. So I would like to hear another opinion from our researcher and academician, Mas Yudi. What do you think, Mas, should be our strategy from the government, civil society organization, from UNHCR, IOM, and also local community and refugee itself in welcoming the new normal?
Okay, thank you, Karina. As I was saying earlier, we haven't totally figured out yet how the new normal look like. I mean, even like the world is still figuring it out. But I think as a practical matter, I'd like to highlight what Anne had been saying since the beginning of this discussions. And I think one of the practical things that we can do is to ensure self-reliance for refugees. And self-reliance, I think the easiest way to achieve that is to allow them to work. And I think that's kind of simple and straightforward. Allow them to work, allow them to fend for themselves, allow them to be productive, and therefore it will open a lot of doors. Yeah, once you are productive, once you have income, once you have means to support yourself, support your families, that would open a lot of opportunities and a lot of doors. I think by allowing that, we could also argue that they're not burdening the states, because I saw one of the questions in the chat box as well, that there's this this fear that the community, the society would see refugee as burdens. Let me be clear, refugee hasn't been burdening state budget. I mean, the government hasn't spent anything on refugees yet. It's the civil society, it's the international organizations that have been spending on refugees. If there's even any remote spending for refugees, I think the number is kind of still negligible. So there's no ground to say that they have been burdening us. But what I'm trying to say is that even in the future, if we allow them to be self-reliant, I think if we allow them to be self-reliant, there's no questions about burdening. In fact, they could be contributing to our economy. And I think that would be the simplest way to contextualize it. Of course, there are usually concerns about if we allow them to, again, as I was saying, allowing them to work doesn't mean guaranteeing them jobs, because the government don't guarantee jobs to every single individual. They help people get jobs, but that's another matter. But I think refugee communities, with the help of the other NGOs and international organizations, could be productive and could find their own ways to support themselves, given that they are given the opportunity to do that. And I think it is the opportunity that we should be opening up for the refugees and asylum seekers to realize their potential. A lot of research has been done, I think, which I think whoever wants to read about it would know that the fear of allowing refugees to work would somehow displace workers or steal jobs and everything it doesn't have any empirical support, because as the economy grows, basically the cake is getting bigger, nobody's stealing anything. I think everybody will benefit from more productive forces in the society, and therefore we shouldn't be afraid of doing this, especially with initiatives from UNHCR, for example, that would trigger collaborations between Indonesians as well as refugees, startup business and so on and so forth. I think those kinds of initiatives are illustrative of the benefits of allowing refugees to work. It's not stealing jobs. It's not it's not taking away something from Indonesians, but it's actually contributing more even to Indonesians. And there are no other choice. What do you want? You want the government to spend money on refugees, on individual, on every month, every single dime? That's not sustainable anywhere in the future. What's sustainable is building self-reliance, and self-reliance can be built with a social inclusion in mind, which means that there are collaborations between citizens, between people, that could increase productivity. So I think that's the first step to do, to be able to allow them to access work. Karina.
Okay, thank you very much, Mas Yudi, for highlighting the importance of promoting self-reliance among the refugees so they can contribute back to the society and can also decrease the burden experienced by the government. That's very insightful and very important point to be highlighted. Now, I also want to hear the opinion from our partner, our speaker from UNHCR and also IOM. I will first invite Miss Anne to give her opinion and also maybe concluding like what should we do as a citizen, as a refugee, government in order to welcoming the new normal. Please, Miss Anne.
Thank you very much, and thank you for asking that question and looking towards the future, the new normal. Yes. I think that we need to build on what we have learned these last 3 months with having to deal with COVID-19. And I think that we need to now begin to resume our normal work that we did before in terms of advocacy and in terms of working on the longer term issues like access to work, like the full implementation of the presidential regulation, because even though the UNHCR, we have not stopped any of our activities. There are some training events that we have had to postpone because of the criteria and the restriction of the physical distancing, but we have not stopped registering people, we have not stopped issuing documentation, we have not stopped carrying out refugee status determination. Unfortunately, resettlement and voluntary return had to be suspended because of the travel restriction. But just yesterday, UNHCR and IOM announced the resumption of resettlement. So that is good news, although we need to bear in mind that resettlement is a solution that's only available for a very small number of the refugees. So that is why, again, self-reliance and livelihood are really crucial issues to work on. So what I think we need to do, it is now to begin to open up those discussions based on the lessons learned that we have got here the last 3 months, open up those discussions again we had very intensively before COVID-19 on access to livelihood, on the pledges that the Indonesian government, they made themselves in the Global Refugee Forum. Let us discuss, let us have, a virtual meeting, if possible, with the like-minded authorities that we do have. We already have one here on the panel. I'm sure there are some others. We have also excellent cooperation with the National Task Force on Refugees, the SATCAS, Cairo, and we can have a virtual discussion. How can we actually move forward? What is it that needs to be done? Of course, the Ministry of Manpower is really critical when we talk about access to livelihood opportunities. And I understand, of course, that the Ministry of Manpower, like many other ministries, are overwhelmed with a lot of sort of emergency issues that have come out of the COVID-19. Many Indonesians have lost their livelihood as well, but we need to be able to talk both about Indonesians that face difficulties while at the same time begin to discuss more concrete long-term solutions for refugees. And I think obviously it is possible, where there's willingness, there is way. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Anne, for your comment and also some sort of strategy how the government should look forward to in order to welcoming the new normal. Now, I want to invite Pak Dean to give your opinion regarding how citizen and refugee, also government, hand in hand with the civil society organization and also other stakeholders to welcoming the new normal. Please, Pak Dean.
Thank you. as I said earlier, I hope these challenges and crises are bringing also opportunities. I mean, we realized how small we are, how fragile we are. The entire planet, all of us, right? Not only the asylum seekers and the refugees and the migrants, but the entire world. And I hope this brings the empathy back in the picture again. We realize that we have the same weaknesses. We realize that we have same vulnerabilities. We realize that we have the same needs. We cannot really fix what happened yesterday, but together we can shape what will happen tomorrow. So this is a really great discussion, and I hope it will continue. The way forward is already mentioned by the panelists. I mean, is working together. Better inclusion into society, opportunities to be productive, because everyone would like to contribute. Everyone would like to be productive. Everyone would like to do something throughout the day. So opportunities for social cohesion, for inclusions, this is the way forward. And I believe we're on the right track together with UNHCR, the government stakeholders, we will, and of course, the academia, the civil societies, with discussion, we can help things to get better. Coming together is a beginning. Staying together is a progress, and working together is a success. So I believe we're on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Dean, for your comment. Now, I think we still have Pak Sukamta. Please, Pak Sukamta, I invite you to share your opinion to the participant regarding how should the government, we as a citizen, the group of refugee, and along with other stakeholders, hand in hand, welcoming the new normal.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all need to stay together and raise the issues and bring these facts about the refugees, the current situation of the refugees to the surface. So the official of the government will take notice about this, and then we from the parliament side will support the voice of the people to give the government more to allocate more budget for the refugee. And I think we need also to get some kind of campaign to have better and stronger regulation, some kind of undang-undang that have comprehensive discussion about the refugees matter, rather than put the refugees matter on the other subject like immigration subject or in the foreign affair subject like in the current situation. So we still have a long way to go, but the people, the Indonesian people, and all the organizations who are currently concerned about the refugee, I think we can do together to push the government, I mean the executive and legislative side, more concerned about the refugee. That's all. Thank you. Pak Karina.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Sukamta, for your closing comment regarding how should we do in welcoming the new normal. So thank you very much, Pak Sukamta, Mas Yudi from IIS, Miss Ain from UNHCR, Pak Dean representing IOM, Mbak Rizka from Suaka, for such insightful discussion that we have this afternoon. I think we have come to the end of our event. Before I close the discussion, I would like to thank everyone who has joined our discussion today. Hopefully you can get the most important message and information from our panelists regarding the issue of refugee in the midst of pandemic, the crisis, and during the new normal in the future, the upcoming new normal. So that's important to be taken into account. And also, before closing the discussion, I would like to draw a line from the whole discussion that we have this afternoon, that actually, quoting Pak Dean, there is no problem that can be solved. Having a multiple perspective, discussing about the future of refugee in Indonesia is a good start and need to be maintained in the future. And also, there's the fact that current presidential decree, according to our panelists, Pak Sukamta, Ms. Ann, Pak Dean, Mbak Rizka, and also Mas Yudi, has mentioned that the presidential decree actually is not sufficient enough today in protecting the right of refugee and asylum seeker, but it should not be underestimating the progress that has been achieved by our government so far. Because for us to be at this point, since we are not the participant and not the ratifier of Refugee Convention, having this presidential decree is such a remarkable achievement for our government, and which showing such a strong willingness of our government to contribute in protecting the livelihood of refugee, and also to ensure the right of this group are being ensured. And also, the focus now that facing by all stakeholders is how to make sure that the government commitment that has been very well manifested in presidential decree won't stop there, but to improve, to continue, and to be enhanced, because the role of government is very important in the phenomenon of refugee like this, along also with the involvement of other important stakeholders such as UNHCR, IOM, SUAKA, and many other civil society organizations that are focusing in refugee cases. And also the involvement of academician and researcher is also vital in the whole phenomenon of refugee. So at the end, we can conclude that having multi-stakeholder initiative will be very, very important to ensure that the protection of refugee is being ensured in our country. There are strategies that can be taken into account in welcoming the new normal. Mbak Rizka has mentioned social cohesion is important, and self-reliance, as mentioned by Mas Yudi, is also important to allow the refugee to be active, productive, independent, and contribute back to the society. And this measure could be very effective to improve mutual trust, mutual understanding among the society and refugee. In other way, this can also be a very effective small measure to help the government decreasing the burden, since this measure can help the refugee to be financially independent. So I think that could be the conclusion for our discussion today. Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here with very outstanding panelists from all important stakeholder and expert in this issue of refugee crisis. Now I give back the floor to the host. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much, everyone. Nothing to add. It was a very interesting and very fruitful discussion. We're glad that we can facilitate this on this very important day, and we look forward, of course, to be working together again in the new normal to support the livelihood of refugees in Indonesia and perhaps beyond, to strengthen all the activism, the research, and the attention of the government. And I think the key word that we are all discussing is about inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank you,
weekend,
Dian.
everyone.
Have a nice weekend. Selamat berakhir pekan.
Berakhir pekan.
Thank you, Dio. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.